I have dedicated every Thursday evening for the past year to completing a Living Dex within Pokémon Home, which not only includes every Pokémon, but all of their forms as well. The added challenge? I had to complete it while exclusively using Switch games, and entirely on stream. Along with a Living Dex, I had to make sure each individual form's Pokédex entry in Home was filled out as well, whether or not it can be displayed outside of battle. If this is your first time on this channel, then the main thing you should know is that I enjoy explaining things in great detail, hence this video's ridiculous length, but I get a lot of positive feedback about my voiceovers. And if this is not your first time, welcome back, you're in for quite a ride. My voice in this video will guide you through my entire journey through filling up this Living Dex, and all of the hardships I had to endure throughout. It's a pretty satisfying journey watching the gradual growth from having absolutely nothing at the start, and having the Pokémon collection increase more and more with each passing day. Though it was all done on stream, I only do post-commentary, so this video is an in-depth look into each day I worked through this challenge, from start to finish, and not just unedited clips from the streams with annoying audio left in. In case you're wondering, why am I only allowing Switch games? It seems odd considering the majority of my videos focus around the GBA and DS era. Well, the fact is, Pokémon Bank will eventually be decommissioned, and when that happens, everything pre-Switch will never be able to be sent to home. So, I wanted to see if you'd still be able to get every Pokémon and form even after that happens. And also, trust me when I say some of these Pokémon are absolute hell to obtain when you're only allowed to use the Switch games. I'm looking at you, default form of Darumaka. Sometimes I streamed more than once per week, and some weeks I missed it, and it just so happened that I ended up doing 52 streams and taking a full year. It wasn't actually planned like that to begin with, it just sort of ended up happening over time. Anyway, due to my channel being used half as a sleep aid and half as actual watchable content, feel free to have this on while you sleep, or while having dinner, doing the dishes, hanging out washing, drawing fan art of your favourite Sonic character, editing videos, or performing knee surgery. If you're watching this and you think you'd enjoy watching it live, give me a little follow on Twitch, twitch.tv/KillerKiwi1642. And if you want to watch the full, unedited streams for this journey, they're all on my VODs channel, which I'll link in the description. Every single second of streamed gameplay from this run is on there. I'm not actually going to mention every single individual Pokémon catch, otherwise we'd be here for another year, instead only covering the ones that were relevant or noteworthy. Therefore, if you're disappointed that I never mentioned your favourite Pokémon, feel free to peruse those videos. I have also included the spreadsheet that I used throughout this journey in the video's description, which includes all of the various games and locations I had planned on obtaining each Pokémon. A quick thing to note, for those curious, I can only use Switch games to receive Pokémon. However, in the case of Pokémon that don't appear anywhere in any of the Switch games, I was allowed to just get official Switch events and use Pokémon Go, but only when absolutely necessary. Along with the obvious form differences, I counted gender differences as forms, and anything else that makes them look different at all, even if it's just cosmetic. I needed to also have every form within the actual Pokédex in Pokémon Home displayed. Some in-battle forms that can't be shown in the boxes do appear in this dex, and so I wanted to fill out those entries for a truly completed collection. Except shinies and Spinda patterns, because no. Oh, one last thing before we start. Most of my videos have a hidden Kiwi in them, and this one is no different. Just thought I'd let you know. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's begin. I created a brand new profile on Pokémon Home for this new challenge, so as not to encroach on my existing completed decks. Simply creating this profile results in a free Pikachu, giving me my first Pokémon straight away. It was male, so I needed to bear that in mind as Pikachu is one of many Pokémon that I'll be needing to get multiple genders for. I definitely didn't regret that decision though. It definitely didn't get very tedious later. Speaking of Pikachu, I started with Let's Go Pikachu, as I decided that starting with the original region would be fitting. At this point I had no solid plans for the exact order of games I'd play, but later on this was properly decided. It wasn't an overly impactful game for this run because every Gen 1 Pokémon could be obtained in other games, so I wasn't super focused on getting lots of Pokémon, deliberately missing out lots of them. Especially if they were in Legends Arceus, as you need to complete the Pokédex in that game to get Arceus anyway. I did still catch plenty of Pokémon regardless, as it's not exactly a difficult game. Also, the chat was displayed on the left at all times, but in order to not break the illusion of this being a normal YouTube video, I covered it up with the lovely minimalist sidebar you can see here. I caught my starter Pikachu, but it didn't actually count for the Living Dex, as this starter can't be removed from the game. For awareness, there's no active counter going on at all times in this video. Instead, I have a counter showing how many I had at the end of the previous day I played. This is due to the fact that it is often the case that evolving a Pokemon will not cause the number to go up since there's a Living Dex, and keeping track of that would be a nightmare. I started with the old classics of Pidgey and Rattata in Route 1. Pidgey doesn't have any alternative forms or gender differences, but Rattata has 3 forms for the purposes of this dex. Male and female look different, and it has an Alolan form. And the same goes for Raticate. After getting everything I saw in Route 1, I did the same in Route 22, and then Viridian Forest. As I said earlier, I'm not going to mention each Pokemon one by one, but if you're really interested in seeing how I got a certain Pokemon, the VOD channel has it all. Instead, I'm just leaving in the highlights. Each time I was done with a game, I transferred all the Pokemon into home, and kept them there unless they would be required again in a different game. I wasn't catching enough repeats though, which was being felt the further I got into the game. The only way to actually grind levels on wild Pokemon is by catching them, as you can't actually battle them one-on-one. As I make my way through Viridian Forest, I'll ask that, if you haven't done so already and you're planning on watching more, please do like the video, subscribe, and when something happens that you deem comment worthy, well, you know what to do. I will say that if you have ever commented on any of my videos, I have seen it. I read and acknowledge literally every single comment on all of my videos, for better or for worse. It would greatly help if this video does well considering how long it took to make. It's not quite as similar as my regular content where I usually need to do something in a specific order, but it was a lot more difficult than any of those challenge runs. Also, if you could send it to someone who likes Pokemon, that would be highly appreciated as well. Alright, now that you've definitely done everything I asked, let's continue. I got out of the forest with a decent chunk of Pokemon, then headed into the Pewter Gym, the baby mechanics not allowing me to enter without something that is guaranteed to destroy Brock's team. And I did just that. Then I headed into Route 3, repeating what I had just been doing, i.e. beating the trainers, catching any Pokemon I didn't have, then headed into Mount Moon. This place has quite a few Pokemon I actively ignored, such as Geodude, Zubat and Paris, all of whom appeared in Legends Arceus. I did still get a Clefairy though, and occasionally did other catches even if they were going to be obtained in later games because of EXP gain. I got through Mount Moon, headed into Cerulean City, beat Misty and did all the other story stuff in the north. Chansey can appear almost anywhere as a rare spawn, and gives a ton of experience, so I attempted to catch them whenever they did appear. After doing many catches in Route 6, including a bunch of Growlithe, I headed into Vermilion City and talked to various NPCs across Kanto for getting high numbers of Pokemon, getting a free Persian, Bulbasaur and Charmander. I completed the SS Anne, won against Mina, and with that, I had a pretty productive first day. Well, for a 4-hour stream where I was highly distracted, my total of 31 individual Pokemon including forms wasn't too terrible. No, I take that back, it was terrible. I got my 3rd badge and did another catching spree of Mons I already had because my levels were lacking due to me ignoring a lot of Pokemon. When I went into Diglett's cave, I was of course looking for a Diglett, finding it immediately. But let's rewind slightly. Something I never noticed at all until someone pointed it out 7 months later is that I missed a shiny Diglett. You see that little sparkle? That means the Pokemon is shiny, and I just charged right into this normal Diglett and never noticed it at all. I might have noticed it if it made a noise or if I could see its blue nose, but no such luck. So yeah, none for the shiny catch count, but 1 for the failure count. You can still see it in the corner there, with the sparkle taunting me. But never mind. I'm sure I made up for it in some way later on though. Some of the Pokemon centres in this game have NPCs that trade Alolan forms of Pokemon that you trade them. This one trades Alolan Rattata, and I'd be doing this for as many of these as I could, because although you can get some Alolan forms in Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet, and Legends ZA, most were easier to get this way. Also, Legends ZA wasn't actually out at this point, so there was no way for me to know which ones I did and didn't need to go for. I stopped off at Vermilion again as I'd caught enough Pokemon to get a gift Squirtle, which I kept in my team for the rest of the game. I then did all the usual story stuff involving Rock Tunnel, Celadon Gym, Rocket Hideout and Pokemon Tower. Continuing south, I beat all of the trainers in each of these routes, caught any Pokemon I didn't have, whether or not I'd planned on getting them in a later game. I did more Alolan form trades, the most important one here being Alolan Raichu, as I wanted to have a Psychic type and Alakazam would require trading, which would require real life effort. Oh, and I finally got Venusaur. I never bothered to try and catch the Kanto starters in the wild, deciding that as long as I had one form of each, I'd be alright to transfer them to other games for later breeding. Anyway, moving things along, story, Hitmonlee, self-co, which took me most of this day because I got distracted by talking to my chat, gift Lapras, gift Porygon. Then I beat Koga, did a big sweep over the west of Kanto, caught every Pokemon on Pokemon Road, not a fan of that name, please bring back Cycling Road. Then beat Sabrina and got all of the various sea creatures on the way back to Cinnabar Island. On the day that I started my 4th stream, the Switch 2 came out, and to celebrate I didn't play the one singular game that was out at the time, instead continuing with Pokemon. I completed the Pokemon Mansion, making sure to catch a few Grimer and a Muck along the way, and caught Ditto as well. It's pretty useless in this game since breeding isn't a thing, but of course it'll be very useful if transferred to other games later. After getting the secret key, I beat the gym, then headed back to other old areas to get a few Pokemon in water I'd missed, then went to Seafoam Islands. In here I got a few more that were easier to get here than other games I'd be playing, such as Shelder, Slowbro, Jinx, Slowpoke and Seal. Oh, but there was one other Pokemon exclusive to here. Which one was it again? Oh yeah, Dugong. Nah, it's Articuno. Even though you can get the legendary birds in their regular forms from Dynamax Adventures and Sword and Shield, I opted to avoid doing too many of them if possible. We'll see if I kept that promise. I caught it, and without hesitation I went straight to the power plant. I made sure to get Voltorb and Electrode here in their base forms, while everything else here was in Hisui. Apart from Zapdos. Although I actually had a lot of trouble catching it, I reminded myself that this is Baby's first Pokemon game, motivation enough to catch it. I headed back to Pallet Town to get the Keystone and the Mega Stone for the Kanto starters. Mega Evolutions don't show up outside of battle and just show automatically in the home Pokédex just by having that Pokemon deposited, so I didn't need to actually get every Mega Evolution or Mega Stone. However, I wasn't passing up the opportunity to sweep Viridian Gym with Mega Blastoise. And so I demolished the final gym and Giovanni, and along the way to the Pokemon League I made sure to catch a bunch of Pokemon I still needed, or ones where I had fully evolved them but needed to recapture their pre-evolved forms, such as the female Nidoran line. I entered Victor Road, and because I was focused on getting through here ASAP, I just used Repels. Although I did beat every trainer here for good XP, I reached the 3rd legendary bird, the fire chicken itself, Moltres. It was caught extremely quickly, much to my relief. I then jumped straight into the Elite Four. I had made sure to actually plan my team and movesets properly so I could just get Kanto out of the way quickly and move on to the next game. I beat the Elite Four and the champion, George. Still don't actually know why I called him George. I became the champion and unlocked the ability to fly around. Before going into Cerulean Cave, I had a list of Pokemon I wanted to catch, evolve and get in trades, such as Sandshrew, which I had traded away for an Alolan one, but I needed another 3. One to keep as is, one to evolve into Sandslash, and another to trade for Alolan Sandshrew to then evolve it. This was a pretty sluggish procedure picking up the missing Pokemon, but after getting them all, it was finally time to finish things. I entered Cerulean Cave, prepared for the final catch. Poliwhirl. No, Mewtwo. I was a little bit underleveled, but the strategy of using Toxic and just keeping my team alive while Toxic slowly outdid Recover was enough to win. And then it was just simply a case of throwing the Master Ball, and with that, Let's Go Pikachu was completed. Actually, that extra Poliwhirl was needed because I didn't have Poliwrath. Right, now I'm done. And so, here are all of the Pokemon I had in home after finishing Let's Go Pikachu, a grand total of 103. Not great, but the next game was going to raise that number a lot. I finished Let's Go Pikachu pretty quickly that day, so just continued on to Legends Arceus. This is my favourite Pokemon game on the Switch, and I was really looking forward to it. Obviously not a fan of the slow start, but it's really fun once you get going. I chose Cyndaquil as my starter, as it would make the beginning of the game a lot quicker, and it's my favourite of the 3. I did the forced catching tutorial to get to Bidoof, Starly and Shinx. Then after more story stuff that you probably already know, I returned and had free reign over the west part of the Obsidian Fieldlands. Thanks to this amazing placement of Beautifly, combined with Cyndaquil knowing Rollout and Ember and quickly learning Flame Wheel, I gained very fast XP for my team. Also, since Gen 4 has the highest number of Pokemon with gender differences, and this game contains every Gen 4 Pokemon, a massive amount of them were going to be ticked off the list after getting everything I could. Thankfully, the star system in Hisui encourages catching the same Pokemon on repeat, so this worked in my favour. The Starly line is one of many where all 3 have differences. I got really lucky here and found Pichu, which is very rare. I did a lot of running around and catching more Pokemon, with this area giving a nice diverse range of types, including Buizel, Ponyta, Eevee, Mime Jr. and, oh, Quilava. I got my first star, which would be getting upgraded further very soon. I decided to do as many side quests as I could, just because I felt like it, and I wasn't being timed, unlike when I did that big, huge, awful speedrun. As I said earlier, immediate second star, and then I headed across the bridge and beat Mai's Munchlax, wishing I'd find one of my own soon. And then it was just a case of catching everything I found, even if I had it already. After setting up the next base camp and meeting Adaman and Irida, I was briefed about the Noble Cleavor and decided I'd leave that till next time. I got bored of Legends Arceus and decided I'd play a different game, so I started a new game on Brilliant Diamond. I then got bored after a few seconds and swapped over to Sword. After getting through the intro cutscene, I got bored again and swapped back to Legends Arceus. I headed further towards the woods, continuing to either KO or catch each Pokemon I saw, including slaughtering a whole bunch of Paris. Just for a laugh, I chucked a Pokeball at the Alpha B barrel near the dam. Oh. Okay. I went back to the camp to withdraw it, and threw a ball at the guaranteed Alpha Kricketune as well, just because. Ah. Well then. I did some decent grinding because I wanted to be able to easily win the next battle, along with continuing to catch more Pokemon that I didn't have in the Heartwoods, including many Boniri and Psyduck. After returning back to the village and getting Balms, I unlocked Weirdeer as a ride Pokemon and beat the Noble Cleavor, very easy as always. I was lucky with a Scyther catch right after, but I hadn't much luck for a while after that. I was really trying to find a female Combi, but it's a 1 in 8 chance and only males spawned. I was also hoping one of these trees would shake since it's one of the few places to get Cherubi and Cherim, with Cherubi being rarer for some reason. Oh, and it was apparent that my alpha catching luck had run out as well. Back at the village again, I got given the odd keystone and collecting the 107 wisps was going to be a colossal task. I met Arizu, then there were no more delays. Say hello to the Crimson Mirelands. It was more of the same. Catch everything I didn't have and everything I did have. I beat the Misfortunes to get the wall fragment back, and after returning it, I had now unlocked the ability to find Unknown. This was going to be a fun little side task. There was one of each of the 28 Unknowns scattered across the entirety of Hisui, and I had to catch every single one for the Living Dex. I kept walking further down, away from progress for now, getting every Pokemon I saw that I didn't have, except for this Tangrowth. Even though I kept building up good team members, I wasn't getting any permanent additions. This game has a habit of causing the player to keep switching up their team as the levels of wild Pokemon gradually increase. I returned to Jubilife Village to start my hunt for Unknown and Wisps, catching the question mark, W, and H forms, and found all 7 Wisps that appear here, only 100 more to go. At Galaxy Hall, I got my 3rd star and went back to the wilds once again. I knocked every shaking tree I found, which was especially good for Burmy and Wormadam, as they have 3 forms each. I met up with Caliba and knocked out Ursaluna and, oh look, another Unknown. I headed further north of the Mirelands, catching everything I didn't have, and becoming increasingly annoyed at the fact that I kept getting rainstorms, as in this weather, space-time distortions can't spawn, and they have a bunch of exclusive Pokemon that I kept missing out on. Although I wasn't actively looking for Wisps at this stage, I did make sure to mark on the map every time I picked one up. But did I keep that in mind for later? Or did I reach 106 and then spend hours looking for the last one? Only time will tell. After beating the easy Noble Lilligant, I was still sitting at 3 stars, so I returned to the Fieldlands to see if I could tie up any loose ends, doing research tasks I'd missed and catching any Pokemon I didn't have yet. I'll just quickly point out that despite no Munchlax spawns each time I checked, I found 3 non-guaranteed alpha Pokemon really close to each other, with a less than 1% chance of one random alpha occurring. Thanks, game. And it started raining again, so still no space-time distortions. I went ahead to the Cobalt Coastlands and just ran up and down the whole area, catching everything I saw, especially Spheal. Everybody loves Spheal. After a while of doing that, I went up the Veilstone Cape, caught 2 Hisui and Growlithe, met Palina, and then went up the Apalm Hill to meet Iscan. I caught Dusclops, then returned to Iscan to get the Basculegion food. I got my 4th star from doing all of that as well, then unlocked the ability to swim. I was finally blessed with a space-time distortion, and so I headed to the area it had formed and waited around for a while. I realised as it was starting that Quilava was able to evolve. Due to it being a Living Dex, I'd need to recollect its pre-evolutions and get normal Typhlosion, but that was something to worry about later. I found a dubious disc immediately, which was a very welcome addition to my inventory, along with getting Vaporeon. However, the main attraction of a coastlands distortion is Magnemite, which can only be obtained here. I did get good fortune here and found one pretty quickly. I found a bunch of other Pokemon here that I didn't have yet, some pretty easy to find elsewhere, but I was certainly pleased about getting Rhyperior. Oh, and Magneton. Catching this and Magnemite meant I didn't need to worry about distortion in this area anymore, and I left feeling pretty satisfied. After a few more catches here and there, I headed to the volcano to progress the story. Much to my surprise, I beat the Noble Arcanine on my first attempt, which is not something I manage to do very often. After doing the balloon minigame for no particular reason, my character started glowing. I've never seen this glitch before. I expected it to disappear when I went back to the village, but still glowing. It went away after closing and reopening the game, which is good as it would have gotten very irritating being like this for the rest of the game. I entered the Coronet Highlands, and in Wayward Cave I found another unknown unexpectedly, but no Gibble were to be found, which was a shame. I noticed earlier that I was severely lacking in water types, mainly since I skimmed over the sea and coastlands, so I got a Whiscash here in hopes that it'd be a useful team member. On the other side, I continued my catching as per normal, beat Melly, got a few more Pokemon after that, set up the mountain camp, beat Ingo, unlocked Sneasler climbing, and made my way through the rest of the Highlands, again making sure to get many catches. After doing some decent progress, I continued on with a series of side quests that I was doing in order to unlock Sticky Globs, which would make catching aggressive Pokemon so much simpler and remove a lot of need to actually enter battles. And then more catching, then I took on the Noble Electrode. And this one I've still never beaten on my first attempt. I needed a 5th star to continue, so I returned to various different overworld locations to try and get missing Pokemon. I ran around for ages and ages, getting as many research tasks as I could, and finally I was just slightly off. And finally, I got my 5th star. I unlocked the Seas Legends, which contains one of the most ridiculous secrets in the whole franchise, but like many other things, we'll get to that later. It was time to say hello to the Alabaster Icelands, and I caught many Pokemon while heading through the snow, mainly just a bunch of Snowrunts, Bergmite, Swinub and their evolutions, but I was in big need of a 6th star. I beat Garrick, and decided I couldn't be bothered following Sabby around for now, so just went into the wilds to fill up my dex as much as possible, and also hunted for sand radishes. I needed 3 of them to finish off the trading side quests, and while searching for a 3rd one and continuing to add to my dex, a space-time distortion actually appeared, my first stroke of good luck for hours. I found Scizor here, the main attraction of Iceland's distortions, along with Raichu, both of them saving me needing to use a rare item later. I didn't get much else, but was happy with what I got, and Ginter was actually selling a Duskstone and a linking cord, and I unlocked Sticky Globs, both the recipe and the ability to buy them. I needed to get 6 stars because at this point I was capped at level 65, and there were a few much higher level alphas I wanted to get my hands on. For now though, I ran through Snowpoint Temple, knowing the puzzle answers already, and then reached the Alpha Gallade, and after a bit of a tussle, it was mine. It was level 70, so as I said I needed to become a 6-star trainer, but that had to wait for a while. I won against Sabby and unlocked Braviary. I then flew down, got the Eternal Ice, and went on another long hunt. I wanted to bag as many alphas as I could, and despite low odds, I actually caught this Lucario pretty easily. I also spent way too long missing this Crobat, and gave up because it was making a fool of me in front of all of the people inside my computer and I didn't like it. As I was making my way to the Noble Avalugg, another space-time distortion actually spawned, and my streak of bad luck was truly at an end. I found a Magmarizer, a Leaf Stone, a Linking Cord, a Shiny Stone, and another Leaf Stone. I don't know what the chances of finding this many rare items in one distortion is, but it's got to be more rare than finding a shiny. One of the only guaranteed ways to get these items is by buying them with merit points. I'd been picking up lots of satchels, but each item costs between 1000 and 1400 MP, so it's a slow process, so anything to ease that is much appreciated. I then actually took on the Noble Avalugg. The day was saved, and with another stroke of luck, Ginter was selling a Black Augurite. I finished off the quest, the big rift appeared the next day, I was exiled from the village and ran around Obsidian Fieldlands, using this opportunity to finish as many research tasks as I could. Hitting all the shaking trees, I found and caught Cherubi, and a big bunny, and a big monkey. As much as it pained me to do it, I had to replace Typhlosion. You did me proud, but Alpha Infernape wins every time. I picked up every wisp I happened across and was amazingly still managing to remember to mark each one on the map. I finally decided to progress the story, went to the ancient retreat to meet Cogita, and chose to go with Irida. Sorry Adaman fans. It was now time to take on the 3 lakes. I caught this flying Togekiss at Lake Verity before heading inside, catching the Alpha Gudra and getting Mesprit's Plume. Then I headed to Lake Acuity, caught Zoroark and got Uxie's Claw, and caught an Alpha Overquill in Lake Valor, getting a Zelf's Fang, along with the Red Chain. And I was allowed back in the town just like that, easy peasy. I was brought to the summit camp with the intention of continuing the story, but I had other ideas, like watching a Spheal continuously roll down a hill. Gaining my 6th star was also an important step, so I was very deliberate about all of the catches and the way I did them in this area, and I finally did rank up. And then, instead of progressing, I picked up a bunch of Pokemon that had slipped my mind in the Mirelands and Coastlands. I put Buizel, Mantike and Overquill in my team, going through this arch during the evening and therefore unlocking Manaphy and Fione, heading into the Seaside Hollow to catch them both, completing that ridiculous side quest. I completed all of the Gone Astray quests, getting a Pete block in the finale so that I was able to do the Ursaluna evolution later. I caught an Alpha Frostlass while I was here, because I was just rattling through them and didn't want to stop. Speaking of rattling through catches, every time I went into the Fieldlands, I perused this area in the hopes of finding the very rare Munchlax, and I was finally graced with its presence. In case you were thinking I should just breed Snorlax in another game though, unfortunately there's a certain reward I needed that requires all of them to actually originate from within Legends Arceus. I got a Distortion in the Fieldlands, and was pleased to find a Sneasel upon walking in. That is, a default form Sneasel, the only one that can evolve into Weavile, and it can only be found this way. I also got Gengar, saving me the need for another linking cord, and luckily, another Sneasel, just as the Distortion was ending. And now I decided I'd complete a large number of long-winded tasks, so I set out to find every single wisp in the game. I did this region by region, finishing the Fieldlands pretty easily. I also went after all the unknown I hadn't picked up yet, along with a couple more alphas, and was pleased with the progress I'd made here. I then got all the wisps and unknown in the coastlands, and headed over to the highlands to do the same, with the space-time distortion spawning as well. I was getting these done now because due to this weather, it could never be interrupted by thunderstorms or intense sunlight, which meant they would definitely eventually appear. I wish I could abbreviate space-time distortion because I've said it so many times, but, well, you can put the reason together in your head. I was thankful to find a Cranidos right away, though this Ambipom wasn't pleased with me trying, and not long after I also got Shieldon, a huge relief getting both exclusives straight away. And guess what? Yep, Icelands were next. While I was looking for wisps, I found a strange coloured Ghastly hanging around. So naturally, that ghost was caught, bagging me my first successful shiny of this run. It looks really good as well, was happy with that one, and even more happy to have finally caught one, balancing out the Diglett failure. I got the rest of the wisps, the unknown, and another distortion where I got Espeon. The other catches and tasks I got helped me rank up, getting to my 7th star which allowed me to use any Pokemon at all. I then headed to the Mirelands last, hoping I'd get everything I was missing. So I ran around picking up all the wisps and more Pokemon, getting number 107 with no issues. The main thing was that a space-time distortion formed. I was really hoping for more good luck here, and I was rewarded for my patience, finding a Porygon straight away. I reduced the number of Eevee I'd need by 2, catching Flareon and Umbreon. And another Porygon. And another Porygon. With that extremely lucky streak done, I evolved Max Friendship Eevee into Sylveon, another into Jolteon, and evolved 2 of those Porygon to get Porygon 2 and Porygon Z. I got the remaining unknown, along with getting Leafeon to top off the evolutions, then talked to Vesa, had a ton of rewards to redeem, then returned to the Shrouded Ruins, got the 108th Wisp, and caught Spiritomb. It would have been so much easier if I didn't need to obtain it within Hisui specifically, but oh well. I needed to do more prep for the final battles ahead of me, so I caught a few of the guaranteed alphas, Probopass and the all-important Gliscor, which would be serving me well later. Wow, a lot of things are being saved for later. Here's a new challenge, I can't say later again for the rest of the video. With that out of the way, I was ready to take on the rest of the main story. I beat Benny really easily, and Kamado as well, because I'd planned my teams in advance for a change. I then caught Palkia, taking a few Ultra Balls before complying, and then Dialga showed up, everyone ran, I got the Origin Ball, and took it back to the top. I always do really badly in this final fight, so I was pleasantly surprised to have beaten Dialga on my first attempt, barely making any mistakes at all. Just had to hope Arceus would go that way, but I doubted it. It was caught after defeating it, I watched the end credits, and still had plenty more to do. I picked up the quests for Shaman and Darkrai, which was the real reason for making save files for other games earlier, and got Oshawott and Rowlet from Laventon. I was given quests to get the rest of the plates, but I also had important plans of unlocking massive mass outbreaks. So I did the quest which involves Mai's Munchlax somehow having psychic powers allowing it to detect them. I did still do Volo's little quest to get the stone plate from a Vespiquen while I was here though. Kogita gave me all the quests for the rest of the plates, and I got Kamado's final fight out of the way to get the fist plate. Then I returned to the outbreaks. I had to complete 3 in each area to permanently unlock them. The ones in the Mirelands, Coastlands and Highlands went by relatively smoothly, but then this one Magby swarm in the Icelands caused me to spend a while here, because it spawned a second wave which contained Magmar. Now, this was really annoying because I was on a timer and Magmar were very aggressive. This was made less annoying when I noticed this pink thing in the background for a split second. Immediately ending this battle, I ran over to it and caught this discoloured Magmar, my second shiny capture of this run. I caught some Duowt as well, another starter line crossed off the list. Just like with Typhlosion though, I'd need to send one to Scarlet or Violet in order to get the base form of Samurott. Plate Quest was back on the menu, so I headed over to Lake Acuity for an incredibly underwhelming fight against Yuxi, with the unstoppable Sticky Glob and Ultra Ball combo. Also, I don't remember nicknaming Palkia here, but it's important, so I'm keeping it in. Next, Lake Valor for the same thing with Azelf. And then into Lake Verity, where Meshprit actually genuinely put up a fight. But as we all know, sticky green spheres are no match for anything in this game. Then I headed on over to the volcano to face off against Heatran. In a very intense fight, I caught it in a grand total of 1 ball. Next was Moonview Arena, and I was already fully mentally prepared to deal with Cresselia's direction reversing spell, and after fighting through that, it was caught as well. Another trip to Snowpoint Temple was required in order to get Regigigas. After an ever so slight struggle, it was caught, and I had most of the plates. With that done, some long cutscenes played, I gave 3 wood to Kogita in exchange for the Pixie Plate, and I was nearly done. While procrastinating the true finale, I was showing off the amazing and wondrous Force Generative AI feature that YouTube kept trying to get me to make videos on, having fun laughing at the horrendous thumbnails. Just a reminder to everyone though that there are still some people out here making our own content and not giving in to the AI slop machine. Anyway, I had done tons of preparation for the final fight, which was against Volo. He was evil all along, who could have seen that coming? Thanks to lots of preparation, I was able to beat him, along with Giratina. Gliscor getting Dark Pulse was a great strategy due to it never missing, as when Giratina uses Shadow Force, its evasion is increased. Altered and Origin forms down without much hassle, and with that, I got the Spooky Plate and the Azure Flute, but I couldn't get Arceus just yet, due to not having every other Pokemon. I then went to Turnback Cave to actually catch Giratina. Since it can't ever be in its Origin form in home, it meant I only needed one, thankfully. It was then time to end things once and for all. And by things, I just mean the Hisui Dex. I still had quite a long way to go though. My first port of call was Galaxy Hall, so Kogita could give me the quest to unlock the forces of nature, and to needlessly get an 8th star. I did a few more massive mass outbreaks to fill out the dex a little bit more, especially good for starters and Pokemon with gender differences, did a bunch of evolutions, then started my hunt for the genies. I used the tried and tested method of Stealth Spray plus Staying Hidden plus Fastball 3 times a stun to get into a battle. Landorus was caught in a single ball. Thundurus was caught in a single ball. And Tornadus, yeah, it was caught in a single ball. They must have boosted odds, there's no way I could have been that lucky. After a pretty boring time of getting all 3 of them to rank 10, I spoke to Kogita, released Enamorus into the wild, headed to the Mirelands and caught it in a single ball. I quickly got it to rank 10 as well, and went back to Kogita to get the Reveal Glass. I changed all 4 of them into Etherean forms, and I'd need to get duplicates of each, so that I'd also have their incarnate forms in home, but that was something to worry about in the future. I was still missing just a few more Pokemon, so I got the last of the tedious evolutions out of the way, Basculegion being last. And now it was time to take on God. The Arceus fight is one I always struggle with, taking 4 attempts to beat. Maybe one day I'll master it, but this day was not it. Regardless, I did of course get Arceus, and no, I don't need 18 of them, because it can only be displayed in its normal form in Pokemon Home, and sending one of them adds all 18 types to the Pokédex, so all good on that front. I wasn't done with the Hisui dex though. I still needed 2 more Pokemon. Darkrai was first. Despite its big, intimidating intro, it wasn't an issue. I may have, however, made a slight mess of the Shaman catch because Beautifly kept interrupting me. But once they had been demolished, I did catch Shaman. In its land form. Using the Gracidia, I transformed it into its sky form. Yeah, it has 2 forms that can be displayed in home. I'll need another Shaman. Ah well, let's just not think about that right now. From that point on, my focus was getting every other form or gender difference I was missing. The only exception was the Rotom forms, which I already had a plan for. Once I was satisfied with my progress, I transferred every Pokemon into home. Obtaining all 242 Hisui Dex Pokemon within Legends Arceus unlocked a special Enamorous gift that can only be claimed on mobile, so I whipped out my terrible spare phone which doesn't have a record function, got the Enamorous, which was shiny but isn't being added to the shiny count because it's guaranteed, and with that done, I was finished with Legends Arceus. For now. With that game finished, I had a respectable 424 Pokemon in home. Just a tiny bit higher than the total after Let's Go Pikachu. Time to start in a new region. I already had a clear idea of my strategy for getting through this game very quickly and easily, starting with choosing Grookey. In actual fact though, my starter choice was insignificant. The weather in each subsection of the wild area changes every day, and it happened to be snowing in the rolling fields, which meant I was able to catch early ice types, which is a rarity. Since I was only playing these once per week, I knew that eventually I'd have to start manipulating the clock in order to get everything I needed, but that was something to worry about when I'd beaten the game. I didn't do many wild area catches until the post-game because they'd be easier then, and so I headed to Motostoke to progress the story. Registering in the gym challenge, I chose the number 7. Yep, that's it. 7. I beat Team Yell, met Marnie, watched the big long cutscene in the stadium, and went to Wedgehurst Station to make the game 70 times easier. After catching this Galarian Slowpoke, the game likely expects you to follow Clara to the Isle of Armor, but I instead went to the Crown Tundra. I met Peony, and his team absolutely flattened me, but you don't need to win this battle. I then simply headed straight to the Max Lair and entered into a Dynamax adventure. I would be coming here a lot because it's the only way to get Ultra Beasts on the Switch, along with a few of the legendaries, and the Dynite ore you get from here leads to a lot of easy experience. For now though, I was just doing the first one, which always has the same Pokemon at the end, Suicune. Because you use level 65 rentals here, they can hold their own against the legendaries. After knocking it out, which was a little bit too close for comfort, I caught it. Yes, I caught Suicune, at level 70. With no badges and a bunch of Pokemon under level 20, and it obeyed me despite having been caught at such a high level. So I had my cheat code for making every battle extremely easy. I decided that before leaving here I'd just quickly progress Peony's Adventure a little bit further. I got the legendary clues and the wooden crown, put it on the statue, met Calyrex, took quite a fair bit of effort to knock it out, got the carrot seeds, and decided I should probably get going elsewhere. But not to progress the story, no. I needed to get an important item from the Isle of Armor, so after beating Clara with some slight effort, I went to the Master Dojo and received the EXP charm, and disgraced them by immediately leaving and going back to Galar. I made my way through the Galar mine, beat Bede, got some more Pokemon in Route 4, remembering how painful it was going to be to get all 4 forms of both Pumpkaboo and Gourgeist, and entered Turf Field. I went into the gym, did the silly sheep herding minigame, and entered the very intense battle with Milo, where I was at a huge type disadvantage. Yeah, I won, obviously. It was almost too easy, but I wasn't breaking any rules by using Suicune. This whole run just consisted of me ploughing through each location, occasionally letting Pokemon other than Suicune see use, but those situations were mainly just Pokemon needing to be weakened since Suicune one-shotted literally everything on account of it being level 70. I got the Rotom Bike, did some more catches here and there, reached Hulbury, definitely didn't spend ages failing the gym puzzle, beat Nessa, got more catches in the creatively named Galar Mine number 2, and followed that up by beating Kaboo. Still wondering what would happen if I got this badge first. Would it levitate inside the circle, or would he just not allow you to battle him until you have at least one? Anyway, I reached Hammerlock, picked up the only easily accessible evolution suite, did a whole bunch of slow-paced story stuff, caught more Pokemon in the location that is based off of England's Grand Canyon, which definitely exists, picked up more fossils, beat B to get the 4th badge, beat Bede again, did more catches in the spooky forest, got through to the next gym, beat Opal, and got through Route 8 to reach Chichester, I have no idea how you pronounce it. I then beat Gordy, got the swimming bike in the snowy area, got many catches done there, then eventually reached Spikemuth. With that town cleared out, I beat Pierce in his awkward mute singing, headed back to Hammerlock, beat the Dragon Double Battle Challenge thingy, and beat Raihan, getting my final badge. I headed over to Route 10 for more catches, but didn't fully explore it, doing a bit of backtracking as I wanted Chandelure on my team. With the final hurdle of a route out of the way, I reached Windon, and without any hesitation went into the tournament. Without dwelling too much on battles, I beat Marnie and Hop, did the boring Macrocosmos section, beat Oleana, then Bede, Nessa, B, Raihan, the interruption happened, I got more opportunities for new catches in the Slumbering Weald, got the Rusted Sword, beat Rose, defeated and caught Eternatus, which I was going to have to do a second time eventually, and then beat Leon and became champion. And now it was time to beat the entire post-game. And this is so boring. I hate it. And knowing I need to do it again in Shield was demoralising to say the least. So yeah, Swordward and Shielbert's story, yada yada. Then after over an hour, I caught Zacian, which was my first catch of that particular day. And I beat Hop a final time because doing so would allow me to get the Swords of Justice. I decided I'd immediately move on to also finishing the Isle of Armor storyline, so I fought Mustard, did occasional catches while hunting down the fast pokes, including my favourite, Crawdaunt. I got to Bulbasaur, then went on a massive Poke hunt, as at this point in time Sword and Shield had a huge number of Pokemon that I couldn't get anywhere else. Again, if you are indeed very curious about exactly what I caught, due to perhaps wanting to follow along for some reason, it's all in the VODs. But trust me when I say, if I sat here and named every single one by one, it would not be fun. Anyway, after over an hour or so, I actually moved Clara's story forward, using the max mushrooms to get max soup, which I need a lot of. Then I won against Clara to get Kubfu. Now, I had to evolve Kubfu, but there's a trick I always use to make it extremely easy. You're supposed to take it to a bunch of scenic locations in the Isle of Armor, then train it to level 70 plus to make it fight a bunch of difficult one-on-one battles. But you can also just remove it from your game, and to prevent soft locks, the story can still continue without it. Going through the Tower of Waters, nobody wanted to talk to me because of my lack of Kubfu, but I didn't care. After fighting Mustard extremely easily due to my aforementioned full team, I got kicked out for not having Kubfu, then got it back from home, and exposed it to the scroll to evolve it into Urshifu without needing to level it. This was just one Urshifu form, rapid strike style, but it had sword and shield. But Kubfu on its own in the Living Dex? That's a story for another day. I filled the rest of my time that night with making lots of progress in the Crown Tundra. Catching Cryogonal here was especially important, but I did catch plenty more. Examining these footprints allowed me to be able to get 4 extra Pokemon I'd eventually need, and wanting to get as many legendaries done as I could, I whistled at this door to get inside and caught Registeel. It took forever. Catching the Regis never seems to fall kindly for me. I then just went absolutely wild with catches, running around and catching every single Pokemon I saw that I didn't yet have to make up for the boring post-game. I racked up 50 catches in a couple of hours, in between them also heading into Rock Peak Ruins and catching Regirock. I just want to give a quick shout out to Jolteon, my main status user who was knocked out about 100 times during this run. After getting all of the Pokemon around Dyna Tree Hill, which includes lots of fossils and the rare female Relicanth, I released the Galarian legendary birds next. Galarian Moltres, the easiest one to track down, was caught in the Isle of Armor. After some annoying effort, I realised how to cheese Zapdos and it was also caught. Back in the Crown Tundra, I used my Cryogonal to get to the Iceberg Ruins and caught Regice. I was determined to finish off the legendaries quickly, and I was making great strides, choosing a Shade Root carrot to release Spectrier, defeating it to get a free Cosmog, and fought Calyrex in its Shadow Rider form, being able to catch it without worrying about the Pokédex order. This would need to be done again in Shield, but with Glastrier, because Game Freak are great at squeezing money out of people who want to complete everything. Speaking of, in the Split Decision Ruins, which requires the 3 original Regis to enter, I chose Regidrago here, and after the catch, I just had one more legendary left for Peony's quests. Galarian Articuno was pretty annoying to deal with, but I got very lucky and got into a battle with it on my first attempt. It did take a while to catch, hence yet another timer ball, but with that done I reported all my progress and I actually wasn't completely done. Upon finding the legendary clue, Dynamax's Adventures would now be holding Ultra Beasts, and this is the only way at all to get them in the Switch games. I decided I'd take one of them on before finishing, and I saw that the Pokemon at the end was Dark-type, and the only Dark-type available at the end of a DA in Sword is Guzzlord, which was a huge relief. I just now had to hope that the useless AI wasn't, well, useless. And they were, but you know what? I still got through it on my first attempt. I reached the end, Guzzlord blessed me with its presence, I KO'd and caught it, gave it an appropriate nickname, and also remembered to pick up another legendary, Type Null, bringing me to exactly 600 Pokemon in the process. Before going any further, since I'd done the home transfer for Kubfu earlier, I could get the gifts for Grookey, Scorbunny and Sobble that would prevent the need for any tedium in terms of getting all the starters. I also transferred in a few other Pokemon, as I had properly compiled a massive list of Pokemon I wanted to catch, evolve and breed for, with one of the most annoying parts of Living Dex is going back and getting pre-evolved forms of Pokemon you fully evolved. I got the Rotom catalogue because it was much easier to get the forms here than in Legends Arceus, but actually didn't bother with breeding just yet. For my catching list, I systematically went from location to location, changing the date to make the weather everywhere in the open world the same. On the 1st of every month in the wild area, the 15th in the Isle of Armor, and the last day in the Crown Tundra, the entire area has the same weather, and certain Pokemon only appear in certain weather. This was all I did on repeat for hours, with me occasionally having to jump to other locations and checking routes that have nightmare Pokemon I knew would take a while to appear, such as the 1% Delmise. Other than that though, the next few days of gaming were just chilled out sessions of catches. And I actually was very pleased when I caught a super-sized Pumpkaboo, another 1% chance form. And it retains its size when breeding, meaning getting super-sized Gurgeist would be easy. And then, catch, oh no, Hop wants me to do something. I'll deal with it another time. At one point my Cosmog reached level 43, evolving into Cosmo M. It can't breed, so I needed to make sure to just never evolve the one I'd get in Shield. I also got properly started on all of the remaining evolutions and breeding, including the starters I'd grabbed from home earlier. After getting all the babies I needed, I made 5 new Rotom and upgraded them to their alternative forms. After a long and tedious process, I was done with all of the breeding I needed to do at this moment. There is an NPC in the Isle of Armor called Regina who trades you default forms for Galarian forms, but there isn't any reliable way to get her to have the one you wanted, though I decided I'd just do this wheezing trade anyway and try again later. This also did mean I had to go and catch another one and they kept blowing up. Not fun. I did Hop's Max Honey quest to unlock the ability to get G-Max Urshifu, then continued my quest for catching and evolving. There was another unbelievably large quantity of new Pokemon obtained this day, but again I'm just glossing over them for the sake of time. I left 2 specific evolutions for last. The silly and confusing get Galarian Yamask to lose 49 HP and then go under the Arch and Dusty Bowl and evolve it into Runerigus, and the equally as infuriating get Galarian Farfetch'd to complete 3 critical hits in one battle to evolve into Surfetch'd. Would be hilarious if they were also in Legends ZA and validating all of that effort. That'd be really funny, I think. Also, little PSA, there is no date to make the entire Isle of Armor have a sandstorm, but if you set your Switch to the 12th of April, the Forest of Focus specifically will have one. My nemesis Escavalier appeared during this sandstorm, and it was caught. I then found out that Regina was trading for the default form of Stunfisk. Because ZA wasn't out, this was the only way I could have gotten it at the time. I wish I'd have known that because this took an unbelievably long time the week before. Then I had one more catch to go before I headed for the rest of the legendaries. Turtonator has a 2% chance of appearing in the Lake of Outrage during intense sun, and this is the only Switch game in which it can be found, so I'd been delaying it for as long as possible. And then I remembered that if your lead has Flash Fire, it boosts the chance to 50%, and it appeared immediately. I spent over 40,000 watts getting the Digging Duo to get me 2 of each of the normally Shield exclusive fossils, therefore getting all 4 of the Galarian fossil Pokemon. Attempting to find the remaining trades, I eventually got a default Zigzagoon, but still no Darumaka, which can only be obtained this way. Finally, it was time to get the footstep tracking out of the way. I ran around the Crown Tundra, tracking them all down, which I thought would be a daunting task, but I found them all in under 15 minutes without needing a guide, which I usually do need. I returned to Sonia to show my 100% progress, therefore being able to catch Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion. They were not easy to catch, but I won't put you through it all. After talking to Sonia, I brought 3 of them to Balamere Lake for some curry, and caught Keldeo as well. Keldeo has 2 forms, which is unfortunate, though in a few months I'd be hopeful that a certain game base in France would save me from this tedium and shield, but you'll just have to wait and see. And what you're about to see next was nothing short of a miracle. Unless someone boring in the comments decides to tell me that the odds are increased or something, but until that happens, I'll live in my bubble of thinking that I got amazing luck. I'd only done 2 Dynamax adventures so far, getting the guaranteed Suicune and then Guzzlord, and I had to get every Ultra Beast through this method. I entered them on repeat in order to get a bunch of Pokemon from a long list, and along with the fact that I never lost any of these and the AI NPCs were surprisingly helpful, I got Blacephalon, Xurkitree, Nihilego and Stakataka, getting a Poipo gift in between for getting 5 total, in a row no less, and then after going outside for 5 minutes to spend quality time with Stakataka, the next one was Celesteela. Again, caught without the team losing at all. That streak was broken by Dialga. Not only did I not need it, but I actually lost. Not that it mattered much. This was made up by the fact that I got Buzzwole next, followed by Tornadus, which I did need from here since it has 2 forms. And then Tapu Bulu, also exclusive to here. And then Landorus. I genuinely could not believe the luck I was getting. Unfortunately, this was when the luck ran out in terms of my teammates being useful. They were awful every time, and Landorus kicked my arse 3 times before I eventually decided I'd take a break. These are frustrating when your AI helpers keep making terrible decisions with 4 KOs across your teammates throughout the entire adventure, resulting in a loss. I left the max layer for a while, and after a very long search I was finally able to get a trade for the default form of Darumaka, breeding to get a second one, and evolved for Darmanitan, then headed back to the max layer to finish what I started. Since it saves the location of a legendary when you fail it, I was able to keep challenging Landorus, which I failed for a 4th time, though I did get a Gmax Garbodor, a small consolation. Then on my 5th attempt I finally got it. I then got Articuno, not needed, but whenever I found one I already had in another game, I'd just catch it anyway to remove it from the pool of possible legendaries. Next was Necrozma, very lucky again, but after that I got Heatran, which of course I already had. Since I'd gotten Swampert during this adventure though, I chose that instead, quickly bred for a couple of Mudkip and evolved one, then headed back in. I then got Entei, Cresselia, Latios, Solgaleo, Uxie, and then failed Tapu Koko, although I got Blaziken from that one, doing the exact same thing as I did with Swampert. I failed Tapu Koko again before succeeding on round 3, caught Pheromosa, Reshiram, and Tapu Fini. With that done, I decided I'd had enough of Sword. I was still missing some Pokemon only found in the max layer, but they were all found in Shield as well, and some could also be obtained in other games such as Scarlet and Violet, so I was satisfied. At the time, Xerneas was exclusive to here, but I knew deep down that it would appear in ZA. I also had Gigantamax Pokemon to obtain, but that was what Shield was for. I upped my total by a ridiculous amount, almost doubling the amount I had after Legends Arceus, jumping from 424 to 843 total Pokemon including forms. I did miss a few that I planned on getting, some accidental and some I decided I'd just get in a different game, but either way, I was pleased with the huge progress I'd made in just one single game. I wanted to get Brilliant Diamond out of the way as quickly as possible, so I had a guide next to me for speedrunning this game. I wanted to give it a genuine attempt and even spent time setting up splits and everything. I'll say now that I was looking at a guide which was out of date, as it said to choose Piplup. I wasn't sure if the character's gender mattered, but they chose female, so I assumed it'd somehow be faster. So I chose the male protagonist because I was button mashing and reset. Attempt number 2 got to the lake, where I chose my starter. It had a neutral nature, which was great, but then my Joy-Con battery was low, and there was no way to change it without having to pause. So I had to reset again. Attempt number 3 failed because I tried to leave Twinleaf Town without talking to Barry first. Attempt number 4 went well until I checked Piplup's nature, which was one of the worst ones it could have. Attempt number 5 was reset immediately because I kept pressing the wrong buttons while entering my name. Attempt number 6 was a failure because I realised I hadn't changed the settings to increase text speed to fast immediately. And then, on attempt number 7, I did everything correct. Female protag, called myself 1, called my rival Barry, changed the settings before doing anything, went to Barry's house, got a Piplup with a good nature, and my batteries didn't threaten to run out. I got all the way past Jubilife City and into the first major battle, and I actually lost due to horrific luck. I was 42 minutes into the stream at this point, and due to my constitution and tiredness from working, I just simply did not have the energy to sit and game for hours without moving. I did say I'd give it one more go, so attempt number 8 began, and I failed immediately because I accidentally opened up the keyboard for my rival's name, and I did the same on attempt number 9. And then it was clear to me just how frustrating it is to try and do a speedrun without already knowing exactly how to do everything off by heart and having practiced 100 times, deleted the splits, and went back to my normal setup. And so it was back to just playing the game normally. That did mean I could call myself Kiwi instead of One, which is nice, and I also chose Tyson as the rival's name because it was so unfitting for him. And then I just ran through the game like normal, though after beating Rourke I deviated from how a normal Diamond or Pearl save would play, since I was able to pick up the free Mew from this person in Floroma Town for having a Let's Go save, along with the Jirachi for having my Sword save file. I really don't understand why they put these here so early in the game, but it helped with my challenge, so I can't complain. After that, I just played the game normally. Nothing particularly exciting happened throughout though, except for all of the animations of Gardenia. During my travels through the Sinnoh region, I just beat the gyms casually, though I did make sure to catch a few Pokemon missing from the Sinnoh Dex that I didn't already have in the Living Dex. Other than those detours though, I was just focusing on the story, which of course concluded with Team Galactic's defeat at Spear Pillar. Once I got 8 badges, without hesitation I filled my party with overleveled Pokemon from previous games. Don't look at me like that, I earned those Pokemon fair and square. Anyway, I slaughtered the Elite Four and Cynthia, and after making sure I'd seen everything in the Sinnoh Dex, I was able to go to the post-game areas and caught a bunch of Pokemon that are unavailable in any game other than BDSP. Most were relatively easy to find, and some breeding was also required, and after that I spent what felt like a century trying to find a Skitty in the underground. They really went out of their way to make some of these Sinnoh exclusives as rare as possible, and they also apparently had a fun time making it difficult to even enter a battle with Skitty. As glad as I was to find this, I still had a few items left to get, but I had some other plans first. I actually ran a quick stream a few days before ZA came out, with the side purpose of getting Scarlet and Violet to the stage where I could get both to the mythical Pecha Berry and have free roaming unlocked. So here we are now, in Paldea. After choosing my favourite Gen 9 starter, Fuecoco, I ran straight to Mesagoza, ignoring everything, did the usual rigmarole with Nemona, Arvin and Team Star, and downloaded the forever available mythical Pecha Berry before I forgot. While I was playing through all of the other games, I was keeping an eye on the state of Pokeportal news in terms of whether or not Walking Wake and Iron Leaves were going to be available again. With that in mind, I needed to be fully ready to be able to receive them both. So I started a new game in Violet as well, choosing Quaxley and then doing exactly the same as I just did in Scarlet. I have a contingency plan for literally everything. It's just how I am. I didn't play any more of them for now though, but got them to this point in case I needed to suddenly jump in another time. Also, because this was just a brief stop off in Paldea, I didn't bother raising the total to include those Gen 9 Pokemon. Yet. I did when the time was right, however. With that done, I did a few tedious grinds, first finding a very rare Moonstone to evolve Skitty into Delcatty. Then I caught many Carvana in the Great Marsh for a Deep Sea Tooth, which took forever as it has a 5% chance of being held, and then stole a Deep Sea Scale from a Relicanth, which took even longer. And it was literally the only way to get them. Very fun. I wasn't going to evolve Clamperl yet though, that was a story for another day. But anyway, with all of that out of the way, I was done with Brilliant Diamond. I only raised the total to 862. It was now time to dive into Legends ZA, the first mainline game released since I started making videos. By the way, I say Z in day-to-day life, but the game's pronounced ZA, and so I don't mind using it in this context. Similar to how it would sound weird to say Dragon Ball Z. I created my character, got off the train, stared at everything since this was all brand new to me, got my bag stolen, which is pretty standard for the centre of Paris, met Tawny, and went with her to get it back, chose Totodile as it's my favourite, and the battle mechanics took a bit of getting used to, but I grew to really enjoy them. Well, I'd have preferred if abilities were in this game, especially since they brought back Mega Evolutions, but let's not dwell too much on that. I also managed to successfully not dwell on how bad the flat textures on the buildings look. I did the first battle zone, met the Eternal Flower Floette, and was really hoping that we'd get it in this game, as it was in the coding of the Gen 6 games but was never made available. After joining Team MZ and meeting the big man from X and Y, I was brought into Wild Zone 1, again being forced to catch Pokemon that would ruin any possibility of me managing to do any Dex Order challenges in this game, met Mabel, did more tutorial stuff, and hoped that I'd unlock free roaming soon. I completed my first ZA Royale battle zone, beat Zack, then as I progressed I just kept moving on to new wild zones. I was glad to see Patrat, as this is one of the very few Pokemon that, before this game's release, was not in any of the Switch games. There were also certain Pokemon that I still didn't have that I originally planned on getting as Scarlet or Violet, but since I was already here, I of course got them all. And then I met Emma and started doing her little requests. And even though I'm a sucker for 100% completion, I regularly ignored side quests unless they gave me Pokemon or genuinely useful items, mainly due to streaming time constraints. I found out that the only Vivillon you ever see in this game is the Meadow pattern, which is the one that you'd get in France in X and Y, which was disappointing as I was not looking forward to having to get them all in Scarlet and Violet. I was also disappointed to find out that Aromatisse and Slurpuff don't appear in the wild, and because I didn't have anyone to trade with, getting them was going to be annoying. I'll also just mention that I didn't realise at the time how amazing Boys the Heracross is in this game, though this wasn't the only thing that took me a while to pick up on. I won't tell you how long it took me to figure out that you can run. Oh, and Mega Evolutions were finally shown off, and it introduced a lot more new ones. I will just reiterate while I'm on the subject again, that I didn't need to get all of the Mega Evolutions because they can't appear in that way outside of battle, and their Mega entries in the Pokédex and home are automatically unlocked just by having that Pokemon. Good news for the Kalos starters because I missed the timed events that give them away. Following the formula that this game sets out for you, I completed another battle zone to get another Challenger's ticket, beat a trainer, ranked up, rinse and repeat. Also, I was happy to see the return of the elemental monkeys, who just like Patrat were neglected until now. You can also get the Kalos starters, so the amount I'd need to do in the Scarlet and Violet terrarium was shrinking more and more. I won my next big battle and ranked up to W, said hello to the other two funky monkeys, started and finished my promotion to rank V, lost the ability to run while chasing Zygarde, fought against the rogue Mega Absol and then was required to take it, again failing any sort of alphabetical challenge, and unlocked Mega Evolution. After more messing around with catches and side quests, I was invited to fight against Vinny and his magnificent sideburns and hair ties. After I got another Challenger's ticket, of course. I hadn't seen any of the new Megas, so I kept getting caught by surprise by Pokemon such as Mega Drampa, which was not easy when I didn't know what was coming. After that was done, I ranked up a couple of stages. It was silly, but also welcome because if I had to do the ZA Royale 26 times, it would be very tedious. With me suddenly at rank F, I had returned home and was getting highly irritated by Naveen and his obsession with a streamer. I mean, who'd get that invested in someone who just plays games on the internet? Okay, so after laughing at how stupid Mega Feraligatr looks, I was done for the day because I decided 7 hours of non-stop gaming, especially of a game I'd never played before, in front of a crowd of people on the internet, was a bit much for me in my old age. Castform was the Trophy Garden Pokemon of the day the next week, so I went searching for it before I went any further. Although Minun also appeared, as the previous day's Pokemon can also spawn. I caught it, then spent 15 minutes looking for Castform with no luck, and thankfully learned when to quit. I put a pin in that for now and started actually playing ZA. As there had been a week-long gap, I'd already completed the game in my own time, so I was a lot more knowledgeable about and familiar with the game and its various mechanics and locations. Lightning Round, Rogue Mega Slowbro and Camerupt, Free Charmander, Mega Victreebel, Guaranteed Shiny Mareep, Very Confused Pidgey, many catches I missed last time, Zygarde Fight, Pebble, Lysander, many more catches, Quiz Show, Tarragon, Canary, Rank E, Gamer Words, Gliding, Rogue Mega Beedrill, and Furfroo's first appearance on the Switch. I actually needed 10 of them, 1 to keep as is and 9 to trim into the different forms it has. But that was something to look forward to further into the game's story. Then I conquered the latest new wild zones, beat Mega Bayonet and Mega Holucha, and instead of progressing any further, I took a little trip to the museum. In here I did probably the funnest and most appealing side quests in any Pokemon game, in which I travelled around the museum finding 12 lost Spupa, while also looking at cool exhibits showcasing things from past games and various stolen artifacts from Hisui. After getting all 12, a 13th one showed up, which I got to keep. Now, you may think this was just a regular old sweeper, but after evolving it, the resulting Vivillon was in its marine pattern. That meant I now had a grand total of 2 out of 20 patterns. Unfortunately, there aren't 18 other side quests to get the rest, but every little helps, I suppose. Before signing off, I did of course head back to Sinnoh again, this time actually finding and catching cast form. I took a break in between the next few streams, but I was checking Brilliant Diamond every day for swarms. When Spinda was finally swarming, I caught it, but you can't transfer it into home. Due to a glitch involving the spot patterns, which whoever is responsible for it clearly has absolutely no intention of fixing, you cannot send Spinda obtained in BDSP or Pokemon Go into home. It has to be from a pre-Switch era game. I still added it to my Dex total when I caught it, and I added one to home from Omega Ruby as a placeholder in the event that it's never fixed, since at that point in time I had no way at all of getting Spinda from a Switch game into home. And that's actually still the case, though technically you could generate one using arbitrary code execution in the Switch re-releases of Fire Red and Leaf Green, then transfer it in once they get home support, but I decided not to bother with those games. And also it's a bit too much effort to do that. By the way, I'm not getting all of the Spinda spot patterns because there are 4,294,967,296 of them. Or 8,589,934,592 if you include shinies. And even if you had an infinite amount of time to do this, you don't have infinite space, as Pokemon Home only has 6,000 available slots, so still impossible. The Sinnoh Swarmer was Corsola a few days later. This would save me lots of time in Shield, as the base form would otherwise require the same tedious process I had to follow for Darumaka. There was no way I was going through that torture again. An hour before I started up again, they added the Diansite event to the game. Very convenient. I downloaded it, but needed to actually beat the game to make use of it. Then I got another Challenger's ticket, went to the sewers for change of scenery, beat Gwyn, beat Ivor and got to rank D, got into debt with the Yakuza, joined the Yakuza, did some rogue megas, a few Rust Syndicate jobs, beat Corbo to get rank C, got more Pokemon I didn't have yet in Living Dex, ditched the Jacinth tournament to do lots of boring rogue mega battles, and then on my way to the next one, there was a Sparkle from this tree. It was a Weedle, bringing me to a total of 3 shinies across all games. I wasn't too impressed with how it looked, so I evolved it, and Kakuna looks a lot better. But I decided I could do even better, and shiny Beedrill looks fantastic. Big fan of that colour scheme. Shame I never used it. Ah well. Then I did the next Rogue Mega Bundle, fought against Laban and forgot that I set my picture to that, made a start on getting starter duplicates, which was not a fun process since Froakie is scared off by literally everything, beat all of my opponents in the Jacinth tournament, including Jacinth herself, getting to rank B, then went through various wild zones to pick up stragglers I forgot about. I caught enough Furfrou to be able to get one of each trim, did the 3 side quests with this lady to unlock all of the haircuts, and got myself one of each of the fabulous Furfrou trims, finally having a way to get them without doing unreasonable GTS trades. I was on a quest to make sure I could have 3 of each of the Kalos starters, and Chespin just refused to show up. Though the spawning mechanics weren't fully discovered at this point, so I was unaware that removing the Diggersby from here was putting me at a disadvantage. Fennekin was alright though. Would have been nice if Chespin had a guaranteed spawn. Ignoring it for now, I just got another ticket and did a trade for a Galarian Slowpoke. And there is a battle where if you win, you get both Galarica items, meaning my original plan to spend ages looking for Twigs and Shield was no longer needed, evolving the Galarian Slowpoke into Slowking with the Galarica Wreath. I found a Chespin at last, some white Flabebe and Floette, beat the Mega Dragonite, got another Chespin, beat Mega Tyranitar and the horrifying Mega Starmie. It rained for the first time in the run, so I caught a few Goomy and did the appropriate evolutions since I only had their Hisui forms. Then I ran around for a while to find out info about my next opponent, Grissom, found out that they are the ones running the cafe that have a Team Flare symbol on its side as their logo, which I somehow never noticed myself until my second playthrough, and battled Grizel. I powered through Lysander Labs, finally battled Grissom, beat him, got to rank A, and had reached the endgame. I hadn't really explained the plot, but something is wrong with Prism Tower, and I had to fight Tawny to determine who would go inside. I won, but she did it anyway, bringing it to life, and then after fighting through the various waves of Mega Evolved Pokemon, I fought the Hyper Rogue Ange Floette. After winning, the Pebble turned out to be the Zygardeite, and so I Mega Evolved Zygarde and it nuked the city, which I guess saved the day. And then the credits rolled by and the big man had actually died. A very cheerful ending. And then I gave my one granted wish. For some reason I couldn't choose financial stability for the rest of my life, being forced to choose to keep the ZA Royale going forever. I did a lot of Flabébé and Floette assortment, then entered Wild Zone 20, where I managed to find each of the starters I was missing. Of course, I caught multiples of each so I could get all 3 evolutions. I got another Challenger's ticket just so I could progress the postgame a little bit more, which costs 50,000 points, and I'd have to do this again many more times, but not right now. Winning against Zack, whose team hadn't improved, and doing so unlocked the ability to catch a few legendaries. I made my way to Wild Zone 11 to catch Xerneas, which didn't take long at all. Then I had to redo 3 of the Rogue Megas to be allowed the privilege of fighting Yveltal. And again, during the fight, I caught it pretty quickly. I then finally decided to actually maybe do something about that event item I got a couple of weeks ago. I returned to the Looker Bureau, followed Emma's Esper around town, eventually reaching this rooftop and meeting Diancie. I caught it after a few failed attempts, evident by the sudden change in lighting, and had to mentally prepare for an upcoming grind. I dedicated an entire evening to doing nothing but the ZA Royale battle zones on repeat, over and over, getting Challengers tickets, again 50,000 points each, then beating the Challenger. I had to do this entire process 15 times. After nearly 5 hours of this, I fought against Tawny, and afterwards I got the Eternal Flower Floette. Not a fan of that side quest. I got a couple more Pokemon out of the way, including a rare female Chikorita, got the Mewtwo event, and got a few more missing Pokemon. By this point, the only Pokemon from the Lumiose Dex I was missing were the trade evolutions Zygarde and Mewtwo, so before the DLC came out I wanted to be fully prepared. I had no evidence to support my theory that the Dex would need to be completed for a special Pokemon that would be added by the DLC, but I wanted it to be done anyway. I'll just confirm now that that theory was false. So I said hello to Zygarde and began the battle. And I failed. And I failed again. And again. And then I finally succeeded and caught it. I would need one more, but only one more, since 10% and 50% can be displayed in boxes, but complete form cannot. Since I had the Mewtwo Knights, I headed into Lysander Labs to catch Mewtwo, and with that done, I was ready to take on the DLC. So of course, when the DLC released, I had a whole bunch of new Pokemon in store for me. Heading up to the roof, I talked to the new character Ansha and her Hoopa, and agreed to let her make donuts, leading to a double battle to win some butter. These donuts allow Hoopa to open up hyperspace portals when it eats them, as is fully expected behaviour, and this meant I unlocked the ability to access a brand new area of the game, Lumiose City, but if it was in Mario Galaxy. After running around for a while, I found a Mankey. And then several more, and they were level 110, which is a pretty cool idea for DLC, making sure people can't just steamroll it with their endgame team. Just a note for those who haven't played it, the levels are boosted only while in hyperspace. They were probably like level 20. You'll come to see that this DLC saved me. A lot of Pokemon that were either impossible altogether without events or much, much harder to obtain in the only other available locations were added. Corbo was leading the charge on fixing the hyperspace portal that is slowly getting bigger above Prism Tower, and the goal of the Mega Dimension story is to make donuts, go into portals, and complete tasks. Very reminiscent of the ZA Royales. The tasks weren't particularly interesting. I was mainly interested in getting more Pokemon. Crabrawler was the first of many that I was originally planning on getting in Scarlet or Violet that I just caught here instead, and the evolutions were all done as well, of course. I did make sure specifically to pick up this free Gimmighoul, which comes with 413 Gimmighoul coins. They added the coins into hyperspace, and with this big amount straight away, I was confident that this could be evolved much faster than it would in Paldea. And I'll tell you right now, I was not planning on giving it back after it was evolved. Anyway, more newer Pokemon were caught, along with reaching my desired points total, and so I was introduced to Karina, a cool little reference for all the ancient gamers who were around all the way back in the days of Gen 6. Yeah, let's not think too much on the fact that those games came out 13 years ago and move on. After defeating Karina and her weird Lucario, it was then time to take on the new improved Mega Absol, which is somehow even edgier than before. After beating its Mega Z form and getting nice butter from a giant golden ball, the usual silly stuff occurred at the hotel. I won the resulting battle, and after Corbo's next briefing, it was time to scour Lumios for more hyperspace portals. When I headed to one that was inside Wild Zone 5, I noticed a little sparkle. It was a shiny Venipede, so I excitedly caught that before moving on. And then posed with it for a little while for no reason. Alright, so more tasks done, and then I took on another new Mega, Staraptor. After getting hammered by it for a while, I won, and to summarise the next section, everyone got terrified by a Gulpin, and then catch, 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 collect, 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 survey done. I entered the restaurant to fight against a Mega I was not expecting at all, Tatsugiri. I wasn't expecting it to be so ridiculously fast and teleport so much either, so it took a few tries, but after taking it down, I returned to the Rust Syndicate once again for a refreshed list of portals. Yeah, it was just this on repeat. Very similar to the main story, except instead of grinding for Challengers tickets, I was doing the various tasks in hyperspace, occasionally needing to return to make more donuts. So after another 23,000 points, it was time for new Mega number 4, Meowstic. I smashed down the walls a few times, and after the KO, I got the Mega Stone, and more importantly, Supreme Butter. After that, I landed in a portal where I noticed a really weird task. You see that at the top right? Catch shiny Pokémon. Really? Seriously? The game decided randomly that it'll give me a measly 4,500 points if I happen across a 1 in 4,096 Pokémon here? Absolutely ridiculous. But when I jumped off this building, hello Machoke. It turned out that if there is a shiny already spawned in when you walk into the portal, there is a chance that the catch shiny Pokémon task will be in the list, so that was good to know for the future. We then chilled together for a while before I moved on. With that excitement over, I got more monotony out of the way and beat the hilarious looking Mega Heatran, which of course wasn't needed for the Living Dex anymore, but it was needed to progress, so was caught. A spooky nightmare happened, we got pulled into hyperspace against our will, and now I had to accumulate 50,000 points, and so I did many portals, taking a break at one point to get some evolutions out of the way. This included Gimmighoul evolving into Goldengo, which, as I expected, was a lot less tedious than it would be in Paldea. I found some Scatterbug and Spupa, and they evolved into Garden Pattern Vivillon. Unfortunately, all hyperspace Vivillon have this pattern, but it did at least add one more to the count. By the way, Alpha Tinkaton's hammer is bigger than the player. Just thought I'd point out that vital piece of information. When I turned the corner, I found a wild Slurpuff. The fact that I was able to get this was a huge relief, because it removed more need for trading or awkwardly waiting for them to appear in max raid battles. And this was a day of firsts, as I had my first game crash of the entire run. I guess the game just didn't like me catching a wild Scovillain. So with that nonsense out of the way, I finally got the survey done, had to make a very specific and weird donut, and once that was done and consumed by Hoopa, we entered an area that isn't Lumios City. I have to say, the change of scenery was very liberating. In the arena, I had to fight Darkrai. Similar to Heatran, I had already caught it in Legends Arceus, so wasn't getting added to the count, and once beaten, I also defeated its big and spooky Mega Evolution. Once caught, I then saved the world, I guess. After that, there were more legendaries to add to the list. The characters were talking about Kyogre, Groudon and Rayquaza, and I was actually sitting at 999 Pokemon at this point, so we were all debating about what number 1000 would be. Unfortunately, I had to rack up 70,000 points before moving on. And so, the Pokemon that caused me to reach a grand total of 1000 in the Living Dex was... Blue Squawkabilly. Yeah, it was a little bit anticlimactic. But I also got the green and yellow ones as well. And then I just continued on, doing hyperspace after hyperspace. I also got the base form of Slowking, removing another from the list of required trades. These hyperspace portals were quite grindy, but the addition of them led to me getting the shiny charm. I hit the required 70k points, got some special salt, and made the Omega and Alpha donuts. With those in my possession, I was able to get a couple of legendaries a lot easier than I would in other games. I entered the Hyperspace Sea, awakened Kyogre, then attacked it for a while, then it went primal, attacked it some more, and caught it. I decided I'd actually use this against Groudon, so I boosted it to level 100, since the overabundance of XL candies in hyperspace allowed for it, then went into Lethal Lava Land, took down Groudon, then primal Groudon, and caught it. After that, I listened to the tale of the Hoenn legendaries, complete with some fantastic looking artwork. Oh yeah, and I now had to get 100,000 points. Fantastic news. When I got Mankey and evolved it, I made sure I'd get the Annihilate evolution sorted, so I brought Primeape to various wild zones to get it to use Rage Fist 20 times. It was quite a clunky task, but while doing this, I saw another shiny Ghastly. Hooray! Oh, but I also did evolve Primeape into Annihilate, and Ghastly into Haunter, just so I had two different shiny ghosts. The only other really interesting thing that happened during the hyperspace grind is that I finally found Aromatisse, crossing off yet another from the list of infuriatingly rare trade evolutions. I reached 100k points, made a Delta old-fashioned donut, and had my most difficult battle yet. Hoopa transported us to Sky Pillar, and Rayquaza was summoned. I had never done this yet in my own spare time, so I had no idea what to expect, but it certainly wasn't easy. I just spammed Moonblast from Xerneas, and that kind of worked. It was a bit slow, but I beat its first form on my first attempt. But the Mega form was the killer. It has this awful tornado move that sucks you in, does lots of damage if you don't roll away quick enough, and then if it immediately follows up with Hyper Voice, it's game over. And when you lose this, there's no progress gauge to return to. You've got to start from the beginning. I thought I was maybe way over my head, but on my second attempt I somehow lived through the multiple vicious assaults, and with just 60 calories left in Hoopa's tummy, I defeated Rayquaza. And then caught it, obviously. Ansha was supposed to be the one who received it, but some words were said that resulted in me continuing to be Rayquaza's rightful owner. In the hotel lobby, I was then given a quest relating to the prison bottle. Very ominous. And then I had to abandon Legends ZA. For a few minutes. I downloaded the Pokeportal news into both Scarlet and Violet, which meant that once I beat the game, a Terra Raid Crystal would appear. But which Pokemon, you ask? Walking Wake and Iron Leaves. They just so happened to become available when I needed them, but were disappearing in a week, and very likely disappearing for the very last time. Now, once downloaded, as long as I never allowed my Switch to go online, the event data for both of them would permanently stay in Scarlet and Violet. Here's the thing though, I don't trust myself to remember to stay disconnected from the internet. But also from this point, I had 6 days to complete the entirety of both games. Let's get Kalos out of the way first before worrying about that though. I didn't have a huge amount left to do, just a few legendaries and a whole lot of mythicals that have never been made available through normal means in any main series game ever. Corbo introduced me to special scans, which, as you'll find out, are just the biggest pile of crap in the series. Though I was more interested in getting the aforementioned mythicals, so I did a quest for Vinny where I gave him a Mimikyu, leading to me being able to trade 999 Mega Shards to awaken a Magierna. I then talked to this shady guy who offered 4 drives for 540 Mega Shards each, so I worked towards getting them while doing more hyperspace research. Then this guy gave me a different side quest that required it to be evening, so I left that for a bit and headed to the bank. There, I found a Meltan just hanging out. I KO'd it, caught it, and then headed into hyperspace. There was a child here surrounded by Meltan, and as anyone could predict, they formed a big Melmetal, which I got to keep. Then I visited Mabel, who gave me a hacked Pokeball. Then I was transported into the Void, because I guess they couldn't think of anything better for a Pokemon that was never given any screen time in the past, Volcanion. After catching it, I moved on. Moved on to what though? I followed the prison bottle side quest, went back into hyperspace and found an unbound Hoopa. I beat it in a one-on-one with ease, and was able to claim this new Hoopa as my own. I'd need another one to get both forms, but let's just shove that worry to the back of my mind for now. It was now evening, so I checked out this battle court, and a little Marshadow showed up. Another quick battle and quick capture done, another mythical under my belt. Then it was time to do what is definitely the stupidest one out of the lot. I mean, this is very easy to figure out. Without any quest hints, I talked to Tarragon and bought some canary bread. Then I went to the specific kid on a roof in Vers Sector 3, trading him the bread and getting popping candy. Then I brought that to Ansha, giving her the idea for the plasma glazed donut, and unlocking a third EX quest. Heading over to another portal, it was the turn of Zeraora to make its debut appearance. And let me tell you, I sucked at this battle so badly. I was not on my A game and kept getting myself killed by its various electric moves. So moving straight to the killing blow, I caught it, and reached my 25k required special scan points at the same time. It was time to cash in on my special scan. It gave me a 5-star battle zone. Useless. And then I had to get another 25,000 points for another scan. Let me explain why this is the worst idea in existence. The main reason you'd want to do a special scan is for a group of rare Pokémon that can only be obtained this way in Legends ZA. They are Cobalion, Terrakion, Virizion, Keldeo, Meloetta, Latias, and Latios. Now, for my Living Dex, I already had the main 3 Swords of Justice and Latios. I also had one of the 2 Keldeo forms, and getting another here would mean I wouldn't need to get in Shield. And of course, Latias here would eliminate the need to get in Shield or Violet. I didn't need Meloetta though, since it's very easy to get in Scarlet and Violet. The frustrating thing about these scans though, is the fact that you cannot choose which kind of hyperspace portal you get, and I was more likely to get ones that were absolutely useless. I kept spending ages getting 25k points, running scans, getting trash, then another 25k points, and rinse and repeat, having to make lots more donuts when I was running low, repeat ad nauseum. The levels of RNG were very frustrating. I did actually get one legendary portal. Unfortunately though, it was for Virizion, which I didn't actually need. Oh well, I wasn't passing up the opportunity and I did catch it. While I was in here, I also found yet another shiny. If that sparkle and noise didn't play, I would not have noticed it though. Throw is definitely the worst excuse for a shiny I've ever found. It's like its judo gi was put in the coloured wash by mistake and now it's slightly stained. Not a particularly huge change compared to a lot of others I've found, but it's a shiny. Can't complain too much. After a few more hyperspace mega shard grinds, I'd gotten all 4 drives and was able to enter another portal. Entering this weird little spooky world, Genesect made its first appearance in a mainline game, with Zarude now being the only Pokemon in existence with no in-game location. After catching it, I had successfully obtained all of the side quest mythicals that this DLC had to offer. Therefore, all of the fun things to do in the game were finally done. The chance-based special scan Pokemon were all I had left, and after spending a full 2 hours getting 25k research points, doing a special scan, getting something useless, and doing that on repeat, I eventually decided enough was enough. I'd spent long enough cooped up in Lumiose City and needed a change of scenery. It's a great game, but 10 weeks of Legends ZA had really taken its toll on me, and I needed out. But before leaving the game behind, I did see a certain trade evolution Pokemon show up on a portal, and so I hopped into it and caught Scizor, which therefore meant I had completed Lumiose Pokédex. Not a requirement or anything, but it was a fitting end. The only Pokemon that I would have preferred to get in this game but didn't manage were Trico and its evolutions, Latias, and another Keldeo. I could get all of them in other games though, so it wasn't the end of the world. So yeah, goodbye Lumiose City. You served me well, but I needed to move on. With Legends ZA finished, I had a total of 1030 Pokemon across all games and in home. Funnily enough, exactly 10 times the number I had at the end of Let's Go Pikachu. I was missing a few Pokemon I was hoping to get from here, but since I knew they'd all be available in other games, I wasn't concerned. There was a looming threat of event Pokemon disappearing from the games in a few days. Which option did I choose though? Did I just stay offline and then play casually each week until the game was beaten? Hell no. I decided I'd try something absolutely mad and attempted to complete Pokemon Scarlet in one single stream. Thankfully you can get both Event Paradox Pokemon in one game, so I just needed to do one speedrun. Getting Iron Leaves in Scarlet does require you to play online with others, but since I wasn't actually receiving Pokemon from real people by doing it, I allowed it. Having my Violet save did serve me well though. I transferred in Quaxley so that when it was Violet's turn, I'd have a very high level starter that would obey me from the start. I had a speedrun guide open so I knew where I needed to go and what I needed to do, determined to finish this in one sitting. The situation was dire, but I couldn't complain too much about it. This is the second challenge run in a row where I've needed Walking Wake and Iron Leaves to become available, and it's miraculously happened. Even though I've been rather vocal in the past about how I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Scarlet and Violet, and I really like Legends ZA, I have to say it felt amazing to play a game with a huge open world instead of being confined to one location, and in a game that has more than like 3 songs with 20 remixes each. Now, Let me introduce Flamigo, aka the Pokemon that is going to rip through the entire game. Yes, this skinny little bird is an unstoppable killing machine. I ended up catching it in a luxury ball, which I believe to be a good omen. Also, it has Scrappy as its ability, just a bit better than Tangled Feet. The game has a good supply of EXP candies if you know where to look, which was great because it meant that I could boost Flamigo up to high levels quickly. So I did just that after picking up a bunch of candies, started the fight with Titan Cloth, and beat it very quickly on both rounds, unlocking the ability to run, which is of course pretty fab to have when beating the game ASAP. Because I'm an absolute gamer, I was able to backwards jump up this hill to skip a huge chunk of required travel, being able to get to areas the game would prefer me not to go to yet. It wasn't in the script, but I did KO any Chansey I saw, and this one happened to get my Quaxley from Violet evolved. As I said, this was getting passive XP from doing absolutely nothing, and so was my Scarlet Firestarter. I went even more off the speedrun route and decided I'd take a break to catch Gimmighoul, since I never actually found one in ZA after evolving it. I registered for my first gym challenge, the one you'd normally do last, but just left after that. The process was to get Titans done first to unlock Traversal, but also unlock as many fly locations as possible. I significantly deviated from the path I was following, going to Kitakami and doing the usual start of the Teal Mask with Carmine and Kieran that I've done a million times. After ousting some ogres, I got the EXP charm and then left them hanging for a while and got back on track with my speed run. I also registered for the Ghost Gym, and on my way down the mountain I caught a Tadbulb. This was because I was checking the best strategies for walking wake, and I heard Bellybolt would be good, so I kept this in my pocket to gain passive XP. Next was Earthworm, and after boosting Flamigo's level just ever so slightly, it was a pretty easy win. High jump unlocked. I actually finally did a gym, Iono's one specifically. Electric types weren't able to do much to Flamigo at level 53, so I swept her team aside. Then in Artisan it was time for Sunflow Request, which didn't tank the frame rate on the Switch too, which was nice to see. I beat Brassius next, again not difficult for my little flamingo. After running into various towns to start gym challenges but not completing them for the sake of efficiency, Bombardier was destroyed in one hit and Koraidon learned how to swim. I ran through the desert and gave Great Tusk a hammering and unlocked gliding, then flew down to Porto Maronada to do Kofu's auction. Then I flew all the way to Castle Royal Lake, taking down the Dondozo and Tatsugiri, and with wall climbing unlocked, I was able to traverse the entire world with 2 gym badges. Not at all what I was expecting to happen. Then I gave my order at the restaurant and beat Larry, headed back and beat Kofu, then beat Katie, watched a lot of Pokemon jump off a cliff, for some reason, reached Alfornada, did the nonsensical button pressing minigame, beat Tulip, slid down a hill, lost to Nimona on purpose to save time, beat Grusha with ease, and for also taking down Rhyme I had 8 badges, just like that. At this point, since it wasn't actually a real speedrun with restrictions, I could have transferred in any of my ultra high level Pokemon that were sitting in home, but I decided I'd just keep going as I was on a roll and I didn't want to stop. With every badge, I was able to buy all the good balls from Pokemarts, so I did start occasionally catching wild Pokemon, but I tried not to go out of my way to do it too much as the main focus was beating the game. Catching a Bisharp in the Bamboo Forest was important because I was planning on using King Gambit against Iron Leaves, and because I just really like King Gambit. Oh yeah, I had ignored Team Star throughout the whole run. I met Clive and took on my first Team Star base, the fighting one, that I'd normally do last. But, you know, Flamigo was just a tad stronger. Next was the Poison base, then some various alternative forms I was missing, then the Fire base, then the Dark base, then after lots of procrastination because Pokemon I needed kept distracting me, including Fancy Pattern Vivillon, reminding me of a horrible grind to come, I headed into the Fairy base, beat Ortega, and had all 18 badges the game had to offer. With that, I then finished off the Team Star storyline by beating Clavel, and Penny as well. Then to finish off the Titan questline, I also took down Arvin. Finally, it was the Elite Four. So, still just using Flamigo, I took down Rika, Poppy, Larry, and Hassel. Oh, and guess what? Yes, that's correct. I did indeed one-hit KO all of Gita's Pokemon. And I did the same to the final fight with Nimona after 10 billion lines of dialogue, and with that I was able to take on the finale of the game's story. Now, this took me 7 hours to reach, but I was still going strong and determined to finish this in one single stream. And yes, you are reading that correctly on the side. I did indeed spend New Year's Day playing through this. Great way to start 2026. Alright, so I dropped into Area 0 and just made my way down, though I did use a couple of skips here and there to plummet into the depths a lot quicker than normal. After getting to the end, learning about the AI professor, battling her and winning, she then sent out Koraidon, I did the same, and won without terrestrializing because that's actually quicker. With that completed, and me going AFK while Ed Sheeran played a muted song over the credits, I then finally unlocked the ability to take on the Event Paradox Pokémon. My Walking Wake crystal was sitting there, ready for me to take on, but I decided against it for now. Instead, I got Bisharp evolved, then made a normal encounter sandwich, KO'd Chansey and Blissey for ages, and eventually, with King Gambit at level 86, I decided that was good enough and found an Iron Leaves raid. And failed. Great. It was not a good time. But then I just persevered, and on attempt number 2, stupid me and 3 people who knew what they were doing beat it, and I caught it. This wasn't complete the Pokédex in order, so catching it first was fine. Then I evolved Tadbulb into Bellybolt, did a little bit more grinding, hosted a Walking Wake raid, and thankfully I had another group who knew their stuff, and with Walking Wake caught, I immediately went to sleep. I did a lot of home transfers, getting lots of Pokemon for the other 2 dexes obtained. This also meant that I got each Gen 9 starter, and while doing that, I also kept a few others in Scarlet for breeding and evolving. My primary goal was to pull out all 32 of the stakes that would unlock the Treasures of Ruin, though after only a couple were done, I ended up finding a shiny Hoppip. Almost thought it was a Skiploom, but thankfully decided to double check. In between pulling out all of the stakes, if I ever did find a Pokemon I didn't have, I would of course catch it, and I was also doing evolutions as I went along as well, boosting that dex total passively. There were some Pokemon added by the ZA DLC that I never found in hyperspace that were thankfully very easy to find, which crossed a lot of them off the list as well. After getting all the stakes, I caught Wo-Chien, Chien-Pao, Ting-Lu, and Chi-Yu. I didn't need to get them in that order, but it felt right. While doing these catches, I was also training up the Hisui starters to get their base forms, getting Samurott after the Chi-Yu catch. I then headed down to Area 0, catching every past Paradox Pokemon. Once done, I properly caught Koraidon, this one being the one I could actually transfer into Pokemon Home. Then I just continued to run around Paldea and caught every Pokemon on my big checklist I drafted up, which included giving the chat an explanation as to why I give every Cacnea a specific nickname, but I won't explain it now because it's a long story. You had to be there. And now, one of the big projects that was underway was getting the Vivillon patterns. Because Game Freak betrayed me and made all wild Vivillon in Legends ZA be in their Meadow pattern in normal Lumiose or their Garden pattern in Hyperspace, and giving me one Marine pattern as a gift, and then making all Paldean ones have the Fancy pattern, it meant that 16 were going to be very difficult. Well, 15 were going to be difficult, and one was going to be... well, let's just not think about that right now. Pokemon Go has a feature called Postcards. If you send gifts to people on your friend list, they receive a postcard based on a location you've visited with a Pokéstop. Postcards you've collected can be sent to Scarlet or Violet once per day, and this causes all wild Vivillon and its pre-evolutions in the overworld to have a different pattern. That pattern will be whichever one corresponds to that real-life region in Pokemon Go, which is also the pattern it would have in that region in X and Y. So I had to add a whole load of random people from all over the world on Pokemon Go and mingle with them to gain lots of postcards. I did this for months in the background, so I had at least one from each required region. I know this whole thing is only used Switch games, but I'm allowing this because it's an actual core feature built into Scarlet and Violet, and I wasn't actually sending the Pokemon directly into the game. I sent a postcard each day between streams and caught a Scatterbug, and I'd then fully evolve them all on stream. After evolving all of them into Spupa, I got a Sun Vivillon, followed by Continental, Tundra, Modern, and then a bunch of duplicates because I found out that you actually need to reload the area, otherwise Scatterbug that appear won't update the new pattern. Monsoon was today's pattern, so before I forgot, I caught that as well. Then doing the rest of the Teal Mask, the Loyal 3 were set free, and I didn't have to worry about the order this time. I took down the 3 Titans, caught Ogerpon, finished part 1 of the DLC, then caught Munkidori, Okidogi, and Fezandipiti. Again, no cares about the order. I talked to Perrin, and because I'd surpassed 150 Pokemon in the Kitakami Dex, she brought me into the woods to take some pictures, and I found the Blood Moon Ursaluna, a cool unique form. Next up, I started the indigo disc properly, and entered the terrarium. I was quite a distance from the 200 in the blueberry decks that Perrin needed, so I caught everything I still didn't have. There were a huge number of Pokemon I was able to get in this terrarium, so this was my life for the foreseeable future. My viewers watched King Gambit get impatient while I was away, and once I got back, I did enough of the story to unlock the League Club room. I lied slightly, by the way. I wasn't 100% locked to the terrarium since there was another week-long gap. Some more bug evolutions led to me getting the Elegant, Polar, Archipelago, River, Icy Snow, Jungle, and High Plains patterns of Vivillon. I ran around the terrarium, getting various Pokemon I didn't have yet, another one with many forms being Minior. It has one for each colour of the rainbow, and the one you find depends on where you are in the terrarium, so I needed to come back and find more of them when I had the chance. The annoying thing is that you can't know which colour it is until it's caught, or if you deal half damage, which led to explosions half the time, so this one was one of the most difficult sets of forms to obtain. After a bit more catching, I decided to take a Trapinch through the gym inspections, which took an extremely long time. Luckily with the power of editing, you don't need to sit through it all. Once I was done, I had a strong Flygon to take on Drayton's challenge. I beat that, along with beating the other 3 Elite Four challenges, then took down the 4 of them as well. Again, editing means many hours do not need to be viewed. I then also beat Kieran and dethroned him as champion, still finding it hilarious that this Vileplume loses interest in him. I then sat through the big talk about Terrapagos, but I wasn't going to take this on just yet. To top off my butterfly collection, I got the Ocean, Sandstorm, and Savannah patterns of Vivillon. Combining this with my haul from ZA, I now owned every type of Vivillon. Yeah, every single one. I decided now was the time to do the big push to finish catches and evolutions, so I ran around getting a bunch of evolution items, hatched a lot of Pokemon, did a ton of evolutions in between many Kitakami and terrarium catches, and walked extremely slowly across the desert and out to the other side to evolve Pomo into Pomot, the way the Lord intended. I talked to Perrin as I'd surpassed 200 Blueberry Dex Pokemon, getting a couple of photos and allowing me to catch both Gouging Fire and Raging Bolt in Area 0, which reminded me I'd need to do a lot of this in Violets as well, but let's just ignore that for now. I finished this off by catching Meloetta, spawning it with the silly spinning plus sepia filter camera method. It has 2 forms, but only its Aria form can be seen outside of battle, so I didn't need to catch 2 of them. Then it was, unfortunately, time to grind for BP, as I needed a lot of it for missing Pokemon and forms, so I ran around the terrarium for many hours doing BBQs on repeat. Naturally, I did at one point encounter a shiny, a cool looking Litleo, making this grind feel a little bit more rewarding and adding yet another to the count. Before I forgot, I connected to a Union Circle with a Violet save file on my other Switch, therefore being able to evolve Finizen into Palafin. Oh yeah, look at all the Milcery I bred for. I wonder why I did that. Anyway, I went into the League Club room to unlock the item printer and the ability to catch the only starters I had never obtained, which were Trico, Snivy, Litten and Poplio. 10,000 BP was a slog, but it was certainly worth it. While hunting for multiple Litten, I dropped down to this area that has a bunch of Sinistea. I would eventually need to get 2 of the extremely rare antique forms, one to keep as is and one to evolve. So I was absolutely dumbfounded when the very first one I checked was indeed the 1% antique form. After recovering from the shock, I caught it, and then a minute passed before I found another one, and then evolved it using a chipped pot. I had set aside an entire stream day the week after this to obtain these, and the game just served them up to me on a silver platter. Well, a saucer, but you know what I mean. With that done, I then also caught 3 of each of the other starters I needed, did all of the evolutions, and finally allowed myself to do the finale. I entered the Area 0 depths, battled and defeated Terrapagos, and caught it. It has 3 forms, but only its regular one is required in home, as it's the only one you can have outside of battle. With the Indigo Disc finished, I then unlocked the ability to get treat items from Snacksworth. He gives you one when you complete a certain number of BBQs, but you can't choose which one you get. Since I'd done a massive amount of them, I was able to get all of the treats, which included Ho-Oh, Raikou, and Kubfu. And then I visited each of the locations that they appear. Ho-Oh was a difficult one to catch. Or not. Raikou did take a lot more effort, and Kubfu was just caught with a Master Ball because I had barely any catches left anyway. This Kubfu would of course never be getting evolved. I also caught a guaranteed own tempo Rockruff near Cascarafa, evolving it into Dusk Lycanroc during the evening. I had a few Minior colours left and they took quite a while to find. When I did get the last of them though, I was done with everything that wasn't ultra rare. I spent an hour looking for even one Artisan Poltergeist, but no dice. I used up all of my luck earlier it seemed, so I decided I'd try another time. Doing a different type of tedium, I had to get all of the Alcremie sweets. To get the sweets, I used the item printer in the League Club room in Scarlet. If you keep feeding this thing BP and materials, it'll occasionally give you some of the sweets. I needed at least 9 of each in order to carry out all 63 of the evolutions. I decided to work smart and not hard, and did a method of RNG manipulation involving using the item printer at an exact time and date which would result in piles of each type of sweet I needed. Without doing this, I'd be at the mercy of RNG itself, and I was not having that. If you want to know exactly how I did this, I put a link in the description to a guide that explains everything you need to know. However, I didn't do the evolutions just yet. I was stubborn and kept searching for Artisan Poltergeist. I found one immediately after I started my second search. A second one appeared only 10 minutes after, without me even looking underneath it, and this wasn't even during an outbreak. The odds were not boosted at all. It should not have been that easy, but I was not complaining. Also, I evolved one of them into Sinnoh. With that done, I then finally decided to get the Alcremie forms out of the way. The ultimate slog when it comes to getting every Pokemon form. It has 63 forms, or 64 if you include G-Max. But the 63 normal ones are due to a combination of 7 sweets and 9 variations on how you can twirl around. It actually wasn't that difficult, I just needed to make sure each Milcery had the correct sweet, and that I spun in the correct direction for the correct number of seconds during the correct time of day. Thanks to my incredibly meticulous planning and organisation, this took about half an hour, and a hurdle I'd been dreading since the beginning had been cleared. I am glad it was quick because it was like watching paint dry if the paint was very colourful. And now there were 2 Pokemon left to obtain which have extremely rare alternative forms. Mousehold is almost always a family of 4, but the parents have a 1% chance of not becoming a nuclear family. So I bred for 100 tandem ice, then boosted each one to level 25 to evolve them. I had an overflow of more eggs, but I chose to only hatch 100 at first. They don't have an evolution animation, so it wasn't as time consuming as it would have been with any other Pokemon. I'd simply KO a single Chansey, check the sprites of my team, and if there were 2 babies, I'd put them away and try the next batch of 5. And after evolving 95 of them with no luck, it looked like I'd need to do a lot of hatching soon. I was prepared for that, but you never know what could happen. Yeah, the last batch actually gave me a family of 3. Literally the 100th one that I evolved. The odds of that must be, well, actually the odds are almost 100% due to the way probability works, but anyway, I was speechless at the fact that I just so happened to get it on the very last one, saving me a ton of time as I would have ended up hatching another 100 of them. I wasn't done with very rare evolutions though. I now had to obtain a 3-segment Dudunsparce. It has a 1% chance of having 3 segments instead of 2, but it has the added bonus of requiring Hyperdrill to evolve, and having to actually watch each one evolve individually. For them to have Hyperdrill, I just needed to make sure the mother and father Dunsparce that spawned all of the babies also had it, and therefore each one that hatched would inherit it and evolve upon levelling. As much as I thought I'd be here for a while, it actually evolved into the big one in Dunsparce number 35, much to my relief. With that done, I successfully obtained every extremely rare and tedious form within Gen 9. Now, something we need to address is the fact that the day after I finished Scarlet, it was the 30th anniversary of Pokemon, and as expected, the 10th generation of Pokemon was announced. At this point, I had a decision to make. Delay this video until an unspecified date in 2027 that would likely be late in the year, or declare that I was going to get the Pokemon and forms available to me at this point in time. This video released in 2026, so I of course went for the latter. Even if Brout looks like it might end up with a Kiwi evolution. I am looking forward to choosing it when Winds and Waves eventually arrive. I'm also looking forward to getting all the Gen 10 Pokemon in Pokédex order when the time comes. That series ended a while ago, but it'll get its revival. And well, that's it. Scarlet was complete. For now. With that game finished, my Living Dex total was at a whopping 1,319 Pokémon including forms. I was at the halfway point, where I'd now be playing the opposite versions and returning to older games to get anything else I'd missed. At the start of this run, I had a constant internal conflict about whether or not I'd bother spending much time on Let's Go Eevee. Then the Legends ZA DLC added Meltan, and that meant I had a way without Pokemon Go to obtain it, meaning I didn't need to obtain every single Pokemon from 1 to 150 within the Let's Go games in order to get the shiny gift Meltan from home. That was a huge relief. It meant all I needed to use Let's Go Eevee for was a trade. I got a Geodude in Let's Go Pikachu, traded it for an Alolan Geodude, evolved it, and then traded it back and forth to get an Alolan Golem. This just upped the total to 1,320. I next jumped into Shining Pearl, but I didn't need it for long. All I needed it for was to trade 2 Clamperl from Brilliant Diamond, one holding a Deep Sea Tooth, the other a Scale, evolving them into Huntail and Gorbis respectively. And therefore I was now on 1,322 Pokemon forms. So I actually had to return to a couple of other games. Hold on a sec. I said it a while back, but I had to make use of Legends Arceus once again. This was entirely just for Shaman. Specifically, since it has its land and sky forms, and this is the only game in which you can obtain Shaman without events, I needed to complete the game again to get a second one. I completed the whole game off stream really quickly to keep redundancy to a minimum, only recording the highlights, picked up the Shaman quest, completed it, caught it, and kept it as is. And then, likely due to some form of undiagnosed neurodivergence going on, I just couldn't make peace with the fact that I was allowing myself to get shinies but not their non-shiny forms, placing them into those slots. I wish I was capable of not thinking like that, but I couldn't let it lie. So I created a new box and home for shinies, and put the ones I'd gotten in there, then revealed that I had completed the entire post-game, caught the forces of nature again, got each of them all the way to rank 10 and therefore caught Enamorus again, so now I had its incarnate and Therian forms non-shiny. That did also mean that I got Thundurus in its incarnate form, which is actually something I didn't have sitting at home. But does that mean that making sure I completed the Hisui dex within Legends Arceus the first time round was a waste of time? Maybe, but what you can't take away from me is that I had an absolutely lovely time doing it. I won't dwell on the second playthroughs for much longer though. I had to beat ZA again for 2 more Pokemon forms. I was working on this simultaneously with the main streamed Legends ZA game. A second Zygarde wasn't technically a requirement for this game specifically, but it beats having to get it from a Dynamax adventure. So, Zygarde was obtained. Then I had to do the entire DLC and the post-game of said DLC. Here's one of the only parts I recorded, me beating Rayquaza again. Hoopa's side quest was unlocked immediately, so therefore, Hoopa defeated, Hoopa got. Zygarde changed to 50% form, and Hoopa changed to Unbound form. Right, it was a rather unceremonious start, but it was time to play Shield. As you can imagine, I didn't have a massive amount of required catches in this game, but that doesn't mean it went by quickly. Before I did anything, I transferred in my unevolved Type Null from Sword, so it could gain passive friendship in preparation for me needing a second one, with them being exclusive to Galar on the Switch. Shield's biggest dex issues were Zamazenta and the DLC Pokémon, with the box legendary only being obtained after completing the unnecessarily long post-game, which I'd already suffered through once, and almost every legendary and Ultra Beast needing to be re-caught in the Crown Tundra. At the beginning, I did exactly as I did in Sword to make the game too easy, going through the initial DA and catching Suicune, but this time also continuously going through more of them to add more and more on top of that. This included Lunala, which I didn't have yet, and surprisingly, my AI helpers were actually really good. For now. The reason I was doing so many was to increase the chances of me getting Ultra Beasts once they were unlocked, and of course to remove ones I already had from the pool in general, in the hopes that it would be easier at the end. Unfortunately, I needed to catch 5 UBs again to get another Poipole to evolve it this time, and the chances of me getting another miracle like I did in Sword were pretty slim. I then got the EXP charm, powered through the main story and beat every gym, getting the small number of missing Shield exclusives along the way. After getting 8 badges, I also did a few extra encounters in the Crown Tundra and evolved Type Null into Silvally. I got through the end game, forced myself through the miserable post-game, catching Zamazenta, then beat the rest of the Isle of Armour, getting another Kubfu, did the same cheaty method to complete the challenge and evolved it into single strike style Urshifu, and unlocked the ability to G-max it. I completed all of the Crown Tundra again in Shield, which meant every single legendary had to be caught again. Most had already been obtained, but the new additions were Cosmog that stayed unevolved, Calyrex in its Ice Rider form resulting in me getting Glastrier, and Regieleki. Then I did the hunt for Footsteps again, had some more curry with the gang, and caught a second Keldeo to keep it in its Resolute form. And everything I cut out, which was a lot, was done just to unlock UBs and shields specifically. I needed another Poipole to evolve into Naganadel, and if it weren't for that, 90% of what I just did would not be required, but that's just how these things go. I then had a very disappointing run of Dynamax adventures, constantly getting legendaries I already had, and even then getting blown out of the dens without being able to remove them from the list. The only newcomer was Lugia, which was caught after 2 failed attempts, and although I did get 3 Ultra Beasts, they were in between a lot of legendaries I already had. When I came back on next time, it went so much better. I got 2 more UBs, which included the only one I didn't have, Kartana, and therefore I got another Poipole, evolved it into Naganadel, and got Latias, Tapu Lele, Zekrom. Then with 1 left I spent hours looking for the last one, Kyurem. I kept getting teased by Dragon or Ice types being at the end, but finally the one I wanted became available. I reached Kyurem first time and took it down despite the awful teammates, threw a Moonball since I was over the moon about being finished, and with it caught, I had done it. Every Pokemon and every form that I could possibly get in Sword and Shield now in my possession. Well, almost every form. I still wasn't done doing max raids because I needed to obtain the Gigantamax forms of every Pokemon that has one. You can force a Pokemon to G-max by using max mushrooms, but 1 spawns for every 3 max raids you complete. So I did that. A lot. I also did find a couple of G-max Pokemon along the way. Not as many as I'd hoped for though. The mushrooms were gathered successfully, and now it was time to make soup. Unlike with Mega Evolutions and every other type of battle-only form, you actually do need to have G-max factor on a Pokemon for that form to register in the home Pokédex. They didn't need to occupy separate slots in the Living Dex, but I still needed to get them. After completing many max raids, getting many max mushrooms, and forcing my Pokemon that still didn't have G-max unlocked to slurp down many bowls of max soup, that was truly it for the Galar region. Shield was finished, taking a lot longer than I was hoping, and the total was now sitting at 1,356. I was so close to the end I could practically taste it. Just 31 more to go. I started a new game on it ages ago and then abandoned it when I decided I'd do everything Paldea related in Scarlet. But now it was Violet's turn to take the stage at long last. I had used my starter from Violet throughout the entire journey in Scarlet, and so it was level 100 and obeyed me from the beginning. Naturally, it wasn't going to be a difficult time getting through this game. To be honest, the main reason I did this is because I just wanted to be finished with the Dex, and I wasn't even originally planning on finishing it in exactly a year, but at day 50 I thought, hey, why not? Anyway, yeah, look, suddenly I've got access to the Zero Gate. Before doing that, I did make sure to get the only Pokemon I was missing on Overworld, Paldean Aqua Breed Tauros. Then, it was Area Zero time once more. I beat the game, ignored Ginger Ed again, started the Teal Mask, did Perrin's little photography quest, remembered I didn't need to finish the Teal Mask, entered the terrarium, got the photos, went back to Area Zero and caught every future Paradox Pokemon, and Miraidon, in a Master Ball of course, and then hunted down and caught Iron Boulder, and in a very climactic finish, caught Iron Crown in a single quick ball. And yeah, I was done. Just like that. I had successfully obtained every single Pokemon that I set out to get in Violet. With Paldea fully completed, the total had climbed to 1,367 Pokemon in total. So close to finishing the entire Living Dex. I was now done with every game, but there were a few gaps here and there. I wonder what I did to fill them in. Alright, so at this point I'd gotten every Pokemon and form that I could between all of the Switch games without the use of events or other external methods. Everything from this point on will be unobtainable once Nintendo kills another one of their Wi-Fi services, unless of course they're in winds and waves. First things first, I hopped into a time machine to get official Switch events that I missed. In Sword, I got Pikachu wearing the original cap, Hoenn cap, Sinnoh cap, Unova cap, Kalos cap, Alola cap, Partner cap, and World cap, Celebi, Victini, Zarude, and Dada Zarude. In Scarlet, I got Deoxys, Deoxys again, Deoxys again, and Deoxys again. Don't ask why they're Korean. I then got the Meteorite from the Porto Marinada auction, changing each of them into its 4 available forms. Don't ask why they had to keep such a massive distance from me each time they transformed. Now that events were out of the way, I then turned to Pokemon Go, which as I said at the beginning, I'd only use if I absolutely had to. And well, I absolutely had to use it to get a roaming Gimmighoul. You get it by using a coin bag, unlocked by sending a postcard to Scarlet or Violet for the first time, which I of course already did for the many Vivillon catches. After catching that and transferring it in, I also got a Gigantamax Melmetal as a reward for my first Go transfer into Home. Nice little 2-in-1. I didn't need to use Go for anything else after that though, so I put Roaming Gimmighoul into its rightful place, but Gmax Melmetal just went into Overflow because I already had a normal one. With that out of the way, there is one form that I'll mention that cannot be obtained with my restrictions, but it is not strictly a requirement for a Living Dex. Also apologies for more shaky camera footage, don't worry though, you won't have to deal with it for much longer after this. Anyway, Ash Greninja does have a Pokédex entry in Home, but it only shows up if you transfer in a Greninja with Battle Bond. I went on to the Sun and Moon special demo version, which I happen to still have on my 3DS. This is the closest thing I have to lost media, and my 3DS is probably worth a fortune as a result, as it's the only way to get Ash Greninja. I didn't need to populate my Living Dex with this, because it looks exactly the same outside of battle, and it can't even be seen in battle in any game apart from the Alola ones, but it's got a separate Pokédex entry so it was still required. I ran through the demo as quickly as I could. It took quite a while, involving a trial that wasn't in the final product. After finishing it all off, I transferred it into Moon, picked it up, and stored it in Pokémon Bank, sending it into Home. Of course, I already had Greninja, so it was just tucked away into one of the overflow boxes. I also got a non-shiny Celebi from Pokémon Bank for using it. Ignore the fact that it needed to be within a time range that was a long time ago, but it meant that I could populate the slot and not feel the horrible discomfort of having a shiny not be in the shiny box. Similar to Ash Greninja though, we can just ignore this as I already got Celebi anyway, just happened to be that I could only get a shiny one. But then, the one form you have to get directly from older games that can only be displayed in that way outside of battle and I couldn't get anywhere in any Switch game at all, was Pokeball Vivillon. I had this feeling that it might be added as an event in Legends ZA, which they could and probably should have done for the 30th anniversary, but I think Game Freak have just forgotten that it exists. I dug up this event Pokeball Vivillon from 2014 in Pokemon X, and the only other instance of this ever being released was a random Japanese Pokemon Center local distribution in 2016. I was very lucky to have just happened to be around when this event was given away all those years ago. Now, any and all of these methods may change in the future, but as of me having completed the entire Living Dex on the 7th of May 2026, all of this information is correct and up to date. Therefore, with all games completed and all Pokemon exclusive to events and Pokemon Go transferred in, I had obtained almost every Pokemon and every form in the Living Dex in Pokemon Home. I'll just reiterate again that all Pokemon forms that can only ever be seen in battle, apart from Gmax forms and Ash Greninja for some reason, automatically get added as obtained in the Pokédex as long as you get to the base Pokemon. This meant that I didn't need to collect each individual Mega Evolution, or get 18 Arceus and 18 Silvally so I could show off each of their types. As long as it appeared in the Dex after capture, it was counted as done. Some people do consider Greninja with Battle Bond to be a separate form in their own Living Dexes, along with a Rockruff with own tempo, and having 2 additional Zygarde with Power Construct along with ones without the ability. Each to their own, but I did not include these as separate entries in mine because they look completely identical outside of battle. Covering more Pokemon that I did not need to get, I do not count Alpha Pokemon as different forms because they don't actually register in the Pokédex, and because I'm just not doing that. Similar to things such as marks and sizes, they are not forms, they're just different attributes. Also, moving an alpha into a game where they don't exist actually causes the alpha status to disappear, as you can see with Gliscor and Probopass who were sent into Brilliant Diamond. I also didn't ever need to obtain the cosplay Pikachu and its variations, spiky-eared Pichu, totem-sized Pokemon, partner Pikachu and partner Eevee, since none of them exist in Pokemon Home and can't be removed from the games in which they were introduced. And also, the Starmobile forms of Revavroom have just never been made available at all, despite their forms existing in the games, and the Arceus was deleted from existence after Gen 4. Oh, and I guess all of the many glitch Pokemon were also skipped. One day they might make you into a Pokemon missing no, but for now, Game Freak still considers you a mistake. And finally, I'll just make a mention of another form that I've been most certainly avoiding having to fully complete. I value my time too much to ever attempt a full shiny Living Dex. They are just simply too rare. Also, despite their shiny forms existing in the coding, it's completely impossible to legitimately obtain shiny forms of a whole bunch of Pokemon, so it would be left incomplete anyway. I will say though, just as proof of concept, I could theoretically, if allowing every single game in the franchise and all events that have ever existed, get every Pokemon as a shiny, except for the ones you see on screen. Though if I was to stick to my strict rules of only using Switch games, Switch events, and Pokemon Go, there are some shinies that would be unobtainable. So, either way, it would be an unsatisfying conclusion. So, how about I give you a satisfying conclusion? Here comes the grand finale. I left the very last Pokemon in the Pokédex for last. With every other Switch game taken care of, I returned to Scarlet, as I still hadn't completed the epilogue, Mochi Mayhem. Then I realised I couldn't start it yet. Okay, so I spent 20 minutes completing the Academy Ace tournament, then actually started Mochi Mayhem. It's a weird one, involving cursed Mochi slowly but surely turning each of the residents of Kitakami into zombies who do a silly chicken dance. After fighting through the various waves of Mochified trainers, which took a lot longer than I'm making it seem, I then had to fight against the true culprit, Pecharunt. It was a very satisfying but relatively bittersweet moment as I knocked it out and then for some reason caught it in a Safari Ball. Once that ball went click, the challenge was over. Across 52 streams and a year's worth of effort, I had obtained the very last Pokemon I needed. This big challenge run consumed almost every one of my Thursday evenings, and many other days as well for so long, and now it was finally done. I was a little bit sad that it was over, but it was honestly a huge relief as well. With Pecharunt transferred into Pokemon Home, I then proudly scrolled through each of my boxes, showing off my fully completed Living Dex, with the forms of each Pokemon obtained. Oh wait, there's actually another gap. There is a special little reward you get for completing the Pokédex in Home. Technically it only requires everything up to 890, but let's not get into that. It felt right to leave this till last. Once I actually managed to tap the claim button. I guess my fingertips weren't working that day. I got the original colour Magierna, and this is the only way at all to obtain it. With it delivered into Home, I'd officially done it. Of course I did have to show it off in its 3D glory, so I sent it into Legends ZA, and did a victory lap of Lumio City, and also brought Pokeball Vivillon with me, just so that it could get outside for the first time in 12 years. And while I was messing around in the wild zones, ready to show off Mega Magierna, a shiny Bunnery just happened to show up, which had me shocked and laughing in equal measures. With that caught, my shiny count reached double digits, giving me the perfect ending. Throughout this project, even though there were a lot of low points and a lot of boring segments, there were plenty more fun and hype moments. I really did enjoy doing this, and even if this video doesn't do well, which I did predict several times due to it not being completing the Pokédex in some arbitrary order, I'm still pleased that I finished it, and I'm proud of the final product. Except for the occasional crunchy footage. Next time I do a big challenge like this, I won't be using footage downloaded directly from Twitch. It ruined the quality of anything in motion. But oh well, I can't change it now. The whole Pokédex, both living and not, was now successfully completed. I ended the run with a final total of 1,387 Pokemon in my Living Dex in Pokemon Home. An incredible achievement I'd already met before, but in the past it was with heavy use of the GTS and older games, and I didn't record any of it. On this occasion, it was all done by myself, with no external help other than my favourite sources of information, which are Bulbapedia, Cerebi, and my Twitch chat. I proved that once Pokémon Bank and all older communications are cut off, you'll still not be able to quite fully complete a form Living Dex, but you'll get pretty damn close, and then have to start begging people on Discord servers for Deoxys and Celebi trades. And of course, along with getting that Living Dex completed, I filled the entire Pokédex itself with all of these forms, which included Gigantamax forms as well. Therefore, including all of them, I had registered 1,593 Pokémon in the Pokédex. But, as a certain slightly more popular, marginally more successful Pokémon YouTuber who is totally not my favourite person on YouTube often says, how did I do? Well, as you know, I did a total of 52 streams, just shy of a full year, spanning from the 15th of May 2025 to the 7th of May 2026. I spent a total of 214 hours, 52 minutes and 28 seconds streaming, which equates to just under 9 days. However, with the non-streamed gameplay, such as my second playthroughs of the Legends games and various tedious grinds, such as getting BP and Scarlet and Gmax forms and Shield, it's a lot more than that. I of course obtained 1,387 individual Pokémon for the Living Dex, but including the Pokémon sitting in my overflow boxes, that number increased to 2,962. I got 14 shinies, 10 were random and 4 were guaranteed. Finally, across all of my streams, I received a grand total of 49,531 chat messages from 223 different users. As much as I'd like to give individual shoutouts to everyone who participated, especially those who joined practically every stream, you know who you are, I know many of you can't join streams due to time zones or just don't like streams and prefer YouTube videos. So instead I will just say thank you very much to every single person who joined the streams, sent messages and donated bits and subscriptions to help me get through the tedious segments. And thank you for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end. If you somehow haven't done so despite watching this far, please be sure to subscribe, like, comment and check out my other videos. Most of them have more interesting restrictions than just being allowed to use Switch games, such as having to complete entire Pokédexes in national Pokédex order, alphabetical order, or regional dex orders, so if that appeals to you, please do check them out. I've also done challenge runs in other games, mainly the Zelda franchise. I want to do more of them in the future, and probably will, even if they gain less traction. After all, I started making videos for fun, not for profit. And of course you should totally follow me on Twitch, and check out my VOD channel if you want to see every individual moment you missed out on while watching this summary video. With all that said, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next one.